Part 73. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 722. Because the two diamonds were of the same size and dazzling, they were given pleasant names. So when Fen Ning heard the names, he became more and more determined to get these two diamonds. When the keys were delivered, two security guards stood ready at the door, the lock was opened, and the diamond was carefully taken out. When he held this cold thing in his hand, everyone around him looked cautious, but Fen Ning looked calm. On the contrary, when he grabbed Lily's hand, his expression became a little delicate and gentle. This look made people around him look cautious. People couldn't help laughing. They no longer had to look at the two diamonds through the thick glass safe to see the beauty of the diamonds. However, when Lily heard that the name of the diamond was Lover's Eyes, she thought of it. In the plot, it seems that when Chen Lele and Fen Ning got engaged, they used this pair of diamonds to make rings. The reason why the reason is so profound is that when the two got married, it happened to be after the Chen family declared bankruptcy and all the family property was auctioned by the court. However, the pair of diamonds were redeemed by Fen Ning and had them made into diamond rings. After that, Chen Lele married people's affairs were mentioned in the newspapers. The newspaper did not mention who her husband's family was, but Zhou Bei he knew that it was Fen Ning. The original owner did not necessarily love Fen Ning deeply. She was just unwilling to accept it. Her life was at its most beautiful. At that moment, it came to an abrupt end because of other people's intervention. If the two were in a normal relationship, the Feng family would not try to separate them even if they were separated. If she and Fen Ning broke up because of their different personalities, maybe Zhou Bei he would not complain. Yes, she was so young at that time, she didn't even think about having a future with Fen Ning, and she never fantasized about marrying him. I never thought about forever, but I was young at that time, and if I fell in love impulsively, I fell in love, but because of other people's interference, because her left father forcibly broke her legs and married her to someone else, she was so painful that she couldn't bear to die, so that this relationship became so precious that when he was about to turn 30, he married someone else. So much so that after having two children, Zhou Bei he looked at Fen Ning and still felt unwilling and regretful. She didn't regret that love so much. She was young and ignorant at that time, so how could she know what true love was? She just regretted that her youth was cut off abruptly. The original owner was deeply impressed by these in his memory, so Lily recognized the two diamonds at a glance. She didn't like these two diamonds as much as Fen Ning did, but she didn't think that the two diamonds in the plot were too eye-catching because they were the wedding rings of Fen Ning and Chen Lele. She just sat aside and looked at Fen Ning. She took the diamond and traced it on her ring finger, and was discussing with the designer who came with Chen how to make the two diamonds into a ring. When he reached Fen Ning's position, he didn't care about money. Until now, he had never asked about the price of the diamond. During the discussion, he informed the designer about the size of Lily's finger. The designer carefully measured it again, and sure enough, he took a piece of paper and wrote it down. Lily was a little surprised how he knew, and looked back at him, only to see Fen Ning holding her hand, her face slightly red. He said with a forced composure, "I measured you while you were sleeping." His expression didn't change. But the roots of her ears were a little red. She held Lily's hand and clasped her fingers tightly. When she said this, she didn't dare to look into Lily's eyes. Such a big business was done tonight. The expressions of several Chen's employees, they were all a little excited. The girl who had previously received the two of them was a little envious now when she saw Fen Ning holding on to Lily tightly, and her mouth was as sweet as honey. Mrs. Hands are really beautiful. They are slender and fair. They are very suitable for wearing rings. Ordinary silver rings look much higher class because of Mrs. Hands. As she said this, she sent a form to Fen Ning filled it out. Now Fen Ning wants to order this pair of rings. From now on, he will be a VIP customer of Chen's jewelry. He has to fill in some basic information. In the future, he will be notified when the rings are made and the rings will be delivered to him. When he came home, he was holding Lily with one hand and filling in the information sheet with a pen. When he heard someone praising his wife, he would have to be more modest if it were anyone else, but Fen Ning didn't. He raised his eyebrows. He raised his eyebrows and said in a matter-of-fact tone, "My wife, of course she has beautiful hands and looks good in everything she wears." Half of his face looked angular under the light, and his arrogant thick eyebrows were raised at this moment. He was so arrogant, and Lily had long been used to him like this. He didn't say anything, and the people around him couldn't help laughing when they heard this. He went to swipe his card to pay, and the designer of Chen's jewelry store discussed it with him for a while before the matter was settled. Lily's paper has been completed and submitted, and there is almost nothing to do. The courses in school have been completed long ago. Her major is easy to find a job. She graduated from a prestigious school, her grades are not bad, and her tutor has a good impression of her. So she said that if Lily wanted to find a job, the tutor would be willing to help recommend her, but Fen Ning didn't want to be separated from her right now, so he pestered her not to let her go. Now Fen Ning was no longer domineering in front of her, and took one wife at a time. Shouted coquettishly, which made people have to agree. At first, I told the designer of Chen's jewelry that the ring would be picked up 10 days after the completion. The design drawings were sent 7 or 8 days ago, but there was no news after 10 days. Fen Ning couldn't help it. When I was about to call to ask, I received another call first. The call was from Chen Lele, asking him to meet in the cafe. When Fen Ning heard the voice at first, he wanted to hang up the phone. Chen Lele on the other end seemed to know what he was thinking, and chuckled lightly, saying that she was a ring for Fen Ning. Fen Ning had been waiting impatiently for this pair of rings. When he heard Chen Lele took the rings, he thought about it and prepared to go there. It's just that he is not stupid. When his car hit Chen Lele before, Chen Lele looked at him as if he were prey. This made Fen Ning extremely unhappy. He had always been a ferocious hunter, not someone waiting to be captured by a woman. Prey, he doesn't like people like Chen Lele who are too complicated. What's more, since he has already pretended to be a person in his heart, he naturally can't tolerate others. He can only pretend to be a treasure in his heart. As for others, let alone put it in your heart, you can't even look down on it. The last time he bumped into Chen Lele, although Beihi's expression did not change at that time, she must have something in mind. Although she didn't say it, she had frowned at that time. Fen Ning still remembered it, so naturally he was not prepared at this moment. Going there alone, she remembered that when her Aunt Wang asked Lily to meet, she knew that she had asked her to go together. This time Fen Ning didn't say anything and also took Lily with him. When Lily saw Chen Lele in the coffee shop, she gave Fen Ning a dumbfounded look. His expression was calm, while Chen Lele looked embarrassed, and his hand holding the cup tightened, but Fen Ning pulled Lily with a calm expression. He sat opposite Chen Lele. He was tall and had long legs. Now he seemed a little more crowded after sitting down. He frowned and spread his body behind the sofa chair. He stretched out his arms to trap Lily within his sphere of influence. Without wronging himself, he stretched his legs and kicked the table. With a squeaking sound, the table squeezed towards Chen Lele. The coffee that Chen Lele ordered earlier also started to slosh on the table. The juice swayed out of the cup and splashed all over the table. The edge of the table was pressed against Chen Lele. She obviously didn't expect that Fen Ning would do such a thing, and she couldn't help but feel a little pale. The coffee table legs pressed tightly against her legs, causing her pain. She was about to get up in a hurry, but Fen Ning, the sides were wider and his legs were resting. Chen Lele maintained his half-rising posture and froze. It took a long time before he reluctantly sat down again, but he could no longer maintain his previous elegance. "Where's the ring?" he asked with a cold expression. When the two of them didn't come in, Chen Lele, who was sitting elegantly and drinking coffee, was now sandwiched between the table and chairs. She looked extremely embarrassed. She couldn't push the table with her little strength. Now although tried to stay calm, her hands were trembling slightly, but the waiter who came to wait for Fen Ning and the two to order something saw her pitiful appearance, and despite Fen Ning's strong aura, helped her drag her chair back a little. After a while, Chen Lele's situation was relieved. Don't ask if my legs are feeling better. Once Chen Lele regained his breath, he reluctantly reached out to straighten his wavy hair, and smiled at Lily again. I'm sorry Lily, what happened between me and my father that night? I told you something trivial and made you laugh, weren't you scared? Lily shook her head. Seeing Fen Ning's impatient look, she reached out to pull him to prevent him from getting angry. No, is your leg feeling better? Chen Lele originally said the previous sentence to Fen Ning, but she didn't expect that Lily would ask her in the end. A dark and inexplicable look flashed across her eyes, and she nodded with a soft smile. Much better. I left first that night. I'm sorry that I didn't have time to find a car to take you off. I always wanted to call you to apologize, but I didn't know your phone number. She stretched out her hand to lift her hair and thought again. She was going to pick up the coffee cup, but the cup had already been wet when the coffee spilled out. She touched it and got it on her hands, and quickly wiped it with a handkerchief. Although her expression was calm, her hands were moving like this duo actually felt a little flustered. Stop talking nonsense, we are here to get the ring. Fen Ning frowned again. He didn't like to see his wife chatting with Chen Lele, so he interrupted Chen Lele's words, and Chen Lele laughed again. You've ordered a ring. Are you ready to get engaged? It seems to be fate. The ring you ordered is made by Chen's jewelry. If I had known Lily, you would have told me and I would have given you a discount. If I hadn't accidentally checked the information, I wouldn't have known it. You know about this, Lily, at least we have been in the same dormitory for 4 years in college, and you didn't notify me to attend such a thing. When Chen Lele said it later, his voice became softer, and a look of disappointment flashed in his eyes. That day, Fen Ning bumped into her. Chen Lele really felt that this was a fate that God might make up for her. She knew that Fen Ning was Lily's boyfriend, but the moment she bumped into Fen Ning's car, Chen Lele still felt her heart pounding. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 723. In her previous life, Chen Lele was really unwilling. Her infatuated boyfriend Liang Jinjiao secretly had an affair with that bitch, and in the end he harmed her like that. She ended up being someone else's plaything. She was really resentful. She hoped that there would be a man who could treating herself wholeheartedly, pampering herself, being strong enough to protect herself, and blocking herself from the wind and rain. This kind of road of rebirth and revenge alone is too hard for her, and she needs someone to rely on. When she saw Fen Ning, she really felt her heart flutter. There was only Lily in Fen Ning's eyes. That feeling made her a little envious and jealous. She had experienced too many men and had seen too many dark sides. It was rare. Seeing pure feelings, she naturally longs for it. When she designed Father Chen's illegitimate daughter, it was just to avenge her previous life. However, Father Chen thought that she should not hold a banquet that night, so that the illegitimate daughter Chen Lele really hated that her daughter was exposed to such photos, and her father stood by his illegitimate daughter without even asking. Although she had known about Chen's father's partiality, she still couldn't bear it at that moment. Zhu rushed down the mountain, and when she returned to school, she somehow got out of the campus and bumped into Fen Ning's car. At that moment, she really thought that her fate had come. She knew the relationship between Fen Ning and Lily, but Chen Lele felt that as long as they were not married, relationships could be fought for. Her fiancé in her previous life was won over by others, and she would be reborn in this life. After that, Chen Lele didn't think it was a big deal to compete for other people's men. After all, she had been treated like this before, but she didn't expect that Fen Ning ignored her at all and gave her money to call an ambulance after he got into trouble with her. She wanted to leave as soon as she made the call, but she held onto the car tightly. In the end, the injury became more serious, and she had no choice but to use Lily's name to ask him to take her to the hospital. Originally, Chen Lele wanted his mobile phone number, but he still didn't stay. During the period of time when she was recuperating in the hospital, Chen Lele actually had some fantasies in her mind. She originally thought that she would talk about it after recovering from her leg injury, but she didn't expect that Fen Ning and Lily would act so quickly and had already bought a ring to get engaged. Chen Lele actually didn't know about this at first. She just accidentally typed Fen Ning's name on a certain occasion, and the Chen family's network included some network coverage of their own Chen's jewelry. She is the eldest lady of the Chen family. Fen Ning's order was found by Chen Lele along with his name, and she discovered it immediately. Chen Lele really couldn't express her feelings at that moment. It was over before she was ready to take action. Chen Lele was very good after her rebirth. She learned languages from various countries, worked hard to practice piano, chess, calligraphy, painting, and other skills. She was also much more mature in dealing with people than she was in her previous life. Logically speaking, she felt that she was better than Lily, but she couldn't compete with Lily. After discovering the order, Chen Lele used his status as the heir of the Chen family to intervene in this matter, until today. She called the phone number Fen Ning left on the order and asked him out. Unexpectedly, he came, but there was Lily with him. Ring Fen Ning's voice deepened now, and his expression showed some impatience. He came here and didn't want to hear Chen Lele talk nonsense, if it wasn't for the ring. He didn't bother to make this trip at all. At this moment, Chen Lele was talking about a wedding he was coming to attend. The more Fen Ning listened, the more impatient she became. He stretched out his hand to directly interrupt what she was about to say. He tapped his fingers on the table twice and emphasized again, "Bring the ring, we still have something to do." He has been doing this for 10 days. Counting his fingers every day, hoping for the stars and the moon, he hopes that the ring will be ready quickly. He will put it on Lily's ring finger and make her his legitimate daughter-in-law. The wish he had made since he was a boy. After 5 years of fermentation, now the time has finally arrived. Fen Ning really has no patience to listen to Chen Lele's nonsense anymore. He frowns tightly, and the muscles in his cheeks twitch slightly as he bites his teeth. Chen Lele didn't expect that he would not even exchange greetings. In vain, he had been thinking about him since she was hit. She couldn't help but smiled bitterly, and her eyes fell on Lily. Lily just looked at her with a smile and said nothing. She looked at that picture 4 times. There is really nothing beautiful about Nian's face. After all, if we just talk about the exquisiteness of her appearance, Chen Lele is as confident as Lily. Her personality is even more unpleasant than mine. She is leaning on the sofa with her long hair just lazily. Her clothes were tied behind her back, and she was still dressed in the way Chen Lele was used to seeing her. Even the words "women are pleased with themselves" could not find any sign of it on Lily. When she knew she was going to meet Fen Ning when she went out, Chen Lele at least dressed up carefully. Although it looked simple, she put a lot of effort into the details. She wore a platinum anklet on her exposed ankle. Lily didn't even dress up for Fen Ning. As for changing clothes, Chen Lele really couldn't figure out how such a cold girl could make Fen Ning fall in love with her. After 4 years of college with Lily, she was able to coax 2 girls, Yang Li and Yu Xiaotian, into submission. But no matter what she did, Lily didn't appreciate her. After getting along with each other, the relationship between the two was only slightly better than that of strangers. At this time, Fen Ning didn't give her face, and Lily didn't even say a word of love for her. Chen Lele was much colder after his rebirth, but when he saw Lily like this, he still felt chilled, and after thinking about it, he opened his bag, took out an exquisite jewelry box and pushed it in Fen Ning's direction. Fen Ning endured it for 10 days. When he got the ring, his face showed joy. This smile was so dazzling in Chen Lei's eyes. She picked up the coffee and took a sip in a covered manner. The next moment, Fen Ning directly opening the ring box, the 2 rings inside were immediately in front of the 2 of them. The 2 diamonds have now been set in the style that Fen Ning requested. Fen Ning's eyes showed undisguised ecstasy. The 2 rings were even more beautiful than the drafts sent by the designer. Sunshine, the diamond reflected bright light through the floor-to-ceiling glass. He did not reach out for the obviously larger male ring. Instead, he picked up the small ring and held it in his palm. His expression, a few doubts flashed across his mind. It was no exaggeration to say that he was more aware of the size of Lily's ring finger than Lily himself. In the past 10 days, he had been touching that finger with a giggle every day, imagining what it would be like after she put on the ring. Now that he had an idea, he naturally had a sense of the size of the ring. At this moment, the ring seemed a little bigger than he thought. Daughter-in-law. Stretch out your hand. Fen Ning endured the doubts in his heart, motioned to Lily to stretch out his hand, took the ring and put it on her ring finger. Fen Ning couldn't laugh this time. The ring slipped in easily. It was obviously a little looser than the appropriate size. It wasn't much loose, but obviously the ring would be suitable according to the original discussion. It is impossible for such a loose problem to occur. It is obvious that the ring is not the size of a lily. Fen Ning had discussed it with the designer many times, and he remembered every detail clearly. After all, it was related to his lifelong event, but he didn't expect that something went wrong in the most important part of the ring. Fen Ning was shocked and angry, and at that moment he had the urge to pick up the ring and smash it. Lily was not annoyed. Instead, she reached out and patted Fen Ning's hand. She could feel Chen Lei's vague hostility towards her. Once the ring was of the wrong size, Lily instinctively took out the ring. She remembered the pair in the plot. When the ring made of lovers' eyes was worn on the hand of Chen Lei, the daughter of a famous jewelry king in Beijing in the past, newspapers and magazines once reported it in detail. Including the carat of the diamond and the size of the ring, she remembered that the ring she wore on Chen Lei's hand seemed slightly larger than hers. Chen Lei is taller than Zhou Beihe, and her frame is naturally a little bigger. She is slender, and her fingers are not much bigger. But something went wrong with the ring at this time. Coupled with Chen Lei's attitude, in the plot, Chen Lei's relationship with Fen Ning had a good impression at first. There is still something unclear in Lily's heart. She reached out and took off the loose ring on her hand. Fen Ning was so angry that she wanted to tear down the Chen's jewelry sign. His eyes were red with anger. When had he ever suffered such a loss? At this moment, he didn't waste any time. He took out his cell phone and dialed the number of Chen's jewelry designer. Lily took the ring in her hand and played with it, while gesturing to Chen Lei to stretch out her palm. Fen Ning's size should be completely correct, right? Lily smiled and looked at Chen Lei with a calm attitude. Chen Lei didn't know why, looking at her smile and plain tone, her back started to feel a little cold. Her expression was a little stiff and she smiled. Shaking his head, "What do you mean? Lily, did something go wrong? Everything is correct. Chen Lei, you don't want to wear this pair of rings on my hand. Stretch out your hand," Lily sneered. Just because she didn't lose her temper doesn't mean she is weak and easy to bully. Fen Ning did not do it at first. I thought about it, but now that Fen Ning has chosen to be with her, it proves that everything that happened in the plot will have to be reshuffled. If there are problems between myself and Fen Ning, it will be fine. Others want to be together inexplicably. Having the 2 of them separated and disrupting Lily's plan made her a little unhappy. Chen Lei had obviously gone too far to deceive others. Whether it was because she had some interest in Fen Ning or had other purposes, What Chen Lele did at this moment made Lily very unhappy. Now Lily was staring at her closely. Chen Lele was holding the bag with both hands, and her palms had some strength. When she heard Lily ask her to stretch out her hands, Chen Lele's face turned slightly pale, and her heart felt like a turbulent sea. She bit her lips, still want to speak. Lily is already a little impatient. Chen Lele, I've been in the same dormitory for 4 years. I really don't want the relationship to get too tense. I told you, extend your hand. Lily's eyes turned cold. She usually doesn't speak, but she seems to be easily bullied by others. When Lily spoke, Fenning, who was on the phone, subconsciously turned his head and stared at her daughter-in-law. The two have been dating for so many years, and Fenning has never seen the always calm Lily have such a strong side, although it can be seen from the fact that Lily did not object to Fenning when she wanted to sell Zoe's father. It can be seen that Lily's character is she was not weak, but seeing how powerful she was at the moment, completely suppressing Chen Lele, Fenning was still a little dumbfounded. The designer on the other end of the phone kept apologizing, but Fenning didn't listen, he just stared blankly. Looking at Lily, Chen Lele hesitated and said nothing the next moment. Lily suddenly slapped the ring on the table, reached out and grabbed her hair. Before Chen Lele could react, she raised her hand and slapped her. There was a crisp sound. Although Lily's slap was not as powerful as Fenning's, it still made Chen Lele's fair and tender face red and swollen. Chen Lele was stunned for a moment, feeling a burning sensation on his cheeks. When it reached her mind, she immediately became furious. What Chen Lele hated most in her life was being slapped in the face. She had been slapped in the face too many times in her previous life. Back then, she was controlled by drugs and lived like a dog. She had no self-esteem at all. As long as anyone was willing, give her medicine, and she would rather kneel on the ground, no matter who the other person is, or what kind of things the other person will do to her. She was slapped a lot, especially by her half-sister who slapped her numerous times. Chen Lele did not expect to be beaten by Lily at this moment, and an unknown fire suddenly surged in her heart. This slap aroused her resentment, and she raised her hand to smash the bag. Fenning did not expect that Lily was talking. Sometimes he would hit people and everyone would be dumbfounded. It wasn't until Chen Lele raised her bag to fight back that Fenning came to his senses. He didn't care whether Lily's beating was justified or not, but it was right to help his wife first no matter what. Fenning subconsciously stretched his legs and kicked the table, and the coffee table hit Chen Lele's chest again. Before Chen Lele could get up, he was hit by the table. The overwhelming discomfort in my chest made me almost spit out with a wow sound. Her body involuntarily sat down on the sofa again. Her hair was still pulled by Lily's hand, and now a whole piece of her scalp seemed to be pulled off. Subdued her, Lily looked at Chen Lele like this and sneered. When Fenning heard this, his body's instinctive reaction was faster than his reason, and he put the phone in his bag without hesitation. He easily folded Chen Lele's arm and pressed her onto the table like a criminal. Now I finally had close contact with Fenning. But Chen Lele couldn't laugh at all. Her bones were almost broken by Fenning. At this time, her back was pressed by his palm. Chen Lele felt like Sun Wukong was pressed by Tathagata under the Five Fingers Mountain. She was so dull that she couldn't breathe. Come, every time I take a breath, my chest becomes dry and painful. The movement on the coffee table attracted the attention of the others. At this time, they all looked over in unison. Lily picked up the ring, grabbed Chen Lele's hand that was already purple and bruised when Fenning folded it, and took it. The ring was slipped into her hand. The size was just right. It was not as loose as when she first put it on. Instead, it fit snugly. It was neither too big nor too small. It was just as Lily imagined. Like that, Chen Lele changed the size of the female ring to her own. Needless to say, the other men's ring is definitely the right size. With confidence in her heart, Lily was not in a hurry now. When Fen Ning saw this scene, his face was so dark that water dripped from his face. Chen Lei struggled. At least we are classmates, Lily, what are you doing? Does it hurt to be slapped in the face? Lily lowered her head and asked Chen Lei. Her long tied hair fell down her shoulders and was swept on the table. Her face was very close to Chen Lei's face. When she spoke, her breathing was like the breeze blew between her head, and Chen Lei's face changed instantly. Her expression was very ugly, and she stared at Lily speechlessly. Chen Lei knew very well what he meant by being slapped in the face. She changed the size of Lily's ring without permission. To Lily, it was like being slapped in the face by Chen Lei. At this moment, she slapped Chen Lei back. Also slapped her in the face, but one was tangible and the other was intangible. Chen Lei did not expect that the classmate who did not talk much in the past would also talk about herself until she could not open her mouth. At this moment, she was in a state of confusion. Yes, Fen Ning didn't care what she thought. He didn't know some things like Lily, but he knew it from the way Chen Lei looked at him. At this time, there was something wrong with the ring that he had been waiting for more than 10 days, and Fen Ning was filled with anger. Burn. A fixed ring can also cause this kind of problem for me. Chen's jewelry is so prestigious at this moment. Fen Ning already hated Chen's jewelry in his heart. Just when he was about to speak, he was suppressed by his hand. A faint smile appeared at the corner of Chen Lei's mouth, but she quickly hid it again. Although this smile was subtle, it was noticed by Lily, and she suddenly woke up. Chen Lei did such a thing this time because she may have some feelings for Fen Ning. The most important thing is that Chen Lei hates Chen's father. She hates that Chen's father ignored her in her previous life and favored her illegitimate daughter. The Chen's jewelry she deserved was finally given to that woman, so Chen Lei was very resentful towards her father. After she was reborn, in addition to seeking revenge on her half-sister, she also wanted to take revenge on her second target. It should be Father Chen. Thinking of Chen's father going crazy and the disintegration of Chen's jewelry empire in the plot, and thinking of the tit-for-tat method she used to fight her half-sister on the night of Chen Lei's birthday party, one can imagine Chen Lei's character and the depth of the hostility in her heart. Chen Lei, who has been reborn for several years, has learned a lot and worked hard to improve her temperament and knowledge. She even made a lot of preparations with the convenience of rebirth. However, rebirth is not a panacea. After rebirth, she can at most avoid. He could predict some of the traps he had stepped into in his previous life, but she did not have any magic, and her methods could not defy nature. Therefore, if Chen Lei wanted to destroy that woman, he would not only have to use the same methods that the woman used on him but also retaliate. Besides her, it would not be easy to deal with Chen's father. After all, Chen's jewelry has a deep foundation, and Chen's father has been in business for many years and is a treacherous person. Even if Chen Lei is reborn in 2 lives, he will not live as long as Chen's father. Chen's father is also the person in charge of Chen's jewelry. If Chen Lei, the result of dealing with Chen's father in this way can be imagined, but because of her character, she has a deep resentment towards Chen's father, so she will definitely destroy the Chen family in order to repay the hatred of her unjust death in her previous life. With her own strength, it was impossible to defeat the Chen family, so Chen Lei had no choice but to find foreign aid. There are 2 types of foreign aid. One is business warfare. In this method, the other party must be stronger than the Chen family, so that it is possible to truly kill Chen's father. Moreover, in this kind of business fight, one can kill 1,000 enemies and lose $800. Who in the ordinary world would be willing to treat her with his life's hard work and property like a child's play? Even if Chen Lei is willing to bet with her body, there will be very few people who dare to play. The other type is people like Fen Ning, who come from a powerful family. Chen's father is quite famous in the business world, but after all, he is just a businessman. Since ancient times, People have not fought with officials. If they meet someone like the Feng family, if you want to bring down the Chen family, it will be very easy as long as you have that intention. In the plot, it is true that after Fen Ning fell in love with Chen Lele, he used the Feng family and his own power to help her get revenge. The former method is almost impossible for Chen Lele to achieve. Chen's is already a top brand in China. Chen's father is deeply rooted and has a great influence in the business world. If Chen Lele wants to deal with him, he can only think of the latter method. Although Chen Lele is excellent, she doesn't know anyone in the political circle. Even if there are such people, she will probably have to pay a certain price for others to be stained with her. Chen Lele was insulted by a man in her previous life. Has a deep resentment towards men, so it makes sense for her to focus on Fen Ning. Fen Ning was originally her type. If she could seduce Fen Ning, firstly, she could get a stable partner, and secondly, she could use the power of the Feng family to easily get rid of the resentment she had in her previous life. But if she couldn't seduce Fen Ning, then she will use one thing to arouse Fen Ning's anger. This ring thing is the best opportunity Chen Lele has found. Using the matter of changing the ring, if you can get in touch with Fen Ning and compete with him before he gets married, you will naturally feel proud from now on if you succeed. Even if you fail and anger him, he will definitely find the Chen family. Unfortunately, Chen Lele could use his hand to vent her anger, which would be of no harm to her, so Chen Lele took action regarding the ring. Lily figured this out and admired Chen Lele for coming up with such a good idea. Seeing Fen Ning gritting his teeth when talking about Chen, and seeing the complicated smile on the corner of Chen Lele's mouth, Lily also laughed. He reached out and gave Fen Ning a hand. Forget it, I'm just asking the Chen family to pay for it. I don't want our marriage to be so bad and unlucky. It is human nature for Chen Lele to want revenge. If Lily were in her position, she might do the same thing, but the situation is different now. Who puts the two on opposite sides? Chen Lele's hatred has nothing to do with Lily, the plan was on her, so Lily naturally wanted to make things difficult for her. As soon as she said these words, Chen Lele's breath was stuck in her throat, unable to spit it out or swallow it. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 724. Fen Ning was stunned for a moment and allowed Lily to pull him away. Chen Lele remained lying on the table, trembling all over. Miss, are you okay? Do you need to call the police? Everyone in the cafe saw the scene when Lily slapped Chen Lele just now. However, due to Fen Ning's tall and strong figure, no one dared to come over. Now as soon as the two of them left, the waiter from the cafe slipped over and carefully lifted the table for Chen Lele. Looking at the fingerprints now appearing on her beautiful cheeks, sympathy and pity appeared in his eyes. But what Chen Lele needs most at this moment is other people's sympathy. In her previous life, a large number of indecent films were released during her birthday party. People looked at her like this. Surprise, and curiosity were mixed with some people's indifferent sympathy. The scene now was combined with the scene in the previous life. Together, Chen Lele couldn't help but almost screamed. She bit her lip and her cheeks were still burning. After being slapped in the face in her previous life, she swore that she would never let anyone slap her in the face again. But when Lily hit her just now, she was unable to fight back. Fen Ning stood directly on Lily's side, subduing herself so that she couldn't even fight back. If she had such a knight by her side in the past, wouldn't she have suffered so many grievances at that time? No need. Chen Lele's voice softened. She clearly vowed deep down in her heart not to let others hit her in the face again, but the facts proved that she had no way to do it. What happened just now made Chen Lele have no way to fight back. She changed the ring size that Fen Ning ordered without authorization. The purpose is similar to what Lily guessed, either to use this opportunity to seduce Fen Ning, hook up many of his powerful foreign aides, and have an infatuated and sincere man. If he fails, he will anger Fen Ning and deal with the Chen family. This matter was originally her fault, and it would not benefit her to make a fuss. At most, she would get a bad name. Chen Lele looked at the ring on her finger that Lily had just put on, thinking of the fantasy in her heart when she got the ring, and then looking at the ring box left on the table, she couldn't bear it. He held his hands tightly. On the other side, when Lily pulled Fen Ning out of the cafe door, Fen Ning kept looking down at her. His eyes were clear and his expression was frighteningly soft. Lily didn't notice at first, but after walking a few steps, she couldn't pretend that she didn't feel Fen Ning's gaze, so she raised her head and looked at him with squinted eyes. "What are you looking at me doing?" "I'm very happy." "Wife, really?" She tilted her head. Her expression was serious, and there was a calm look between her eyebrows and eyes that was not what she should have in her youth. She looked mature and prudent, but Fen Ning liked him more and more the more he looked at her. He just looked at Lily with a smile. She was still calm at first. Later, my cheeks and ears began to turn red. Although he couldn't bear to look away, his expression seemed to be getting calmer and calmer. But somehow, Fen Ning felt that she was very cute in his eyes. People were coming and going in front of the coffee shop, and Fen Ning rubbed Lily into his arms. "Daughter-in-law, your brother Ning is so happy. You can touch my heartbeat, it's beating so fast." This was his relationship with Lily. This is the first time in many years that I have seen Lily acting like this. When the two of them were together in the past, even after being intimate, Fen Ning would sometimes dare to do it, but he would feel shy and excited afterwards, but Lily was always so calm. In Fen Ning's memory, she had never seen Lily so excited. When they were in high school, even if the Feng family sent Aunt Wang to separate the two, she always looked calm and composed, but just now because of the ring, he reached out and hit Chen Lele. If Fen Ning was also angry because of the wrong ring size at the beginning, after all, the accident with the ring not only ruined his mood, but also marked the end of his 5-year dream. He also hated Chen Lele and hated Chen Lele. He couldn't hit her. Fen Ning had nothing but Lily in his heart, but he regarded Chen Lele as an ordinary person. If he was angered, he would beat her regardless of whether she was a man or a woman. But when he left the coffee shop, he calmed down. Thinking of Lily's actions just now, Fen Ning couldn't help but laugh. His mood was soaring at this moment, making him want to cry out with joy. His head seeing Lily so excited for the first time, and it was because of him, Fen Ning was so excited that he couldn't speak. He just grabbed Lily's hand and motioned her to touch his chest, eager to let her listen to his heartbeat. The appearance made Lily couldn't help but kick him, signaling him to put her down. "What do you like?" "I just want to teach her a lesson." Fen Ning's enthusiasm was beyond Lily's expectation. She said this with a calm expression, but Fen Ning laughed haha, regardless of the fact that he was still there at the moment. On the street, he hugged her and spun her around, attracting the attention of people around him. "I'm just happy, my wife hit someone." He looked a little proud, with raised eyebrows. "It's a pity that I can't beat her, it was too gentle, I should have slapped you more." "What's the use of just slapping her? It will only hurt her for a while." Li straightened her hair and put her hand on Fen Ning's arm. "I want to make her regret it for the rest of her life." Chen Lele thought that after being reborn, she knew what happened in her previous life and planned. People are so relaxed, but unfortunately rebirth does not mean an increase in IQ. Even if she can come up with an idea, she probably has not thought about the consequences of failure. If she didn't blame her, Lily wouldn't care about her. It was her business to have a life and death fight with her half-sister, but she decided to target herself and Fen Ning, which made Lily feel very sad. Not fast. She has a half-sister who is the illegitimate daughter left behind by her father. They fought fiercely. As soon as she said this, Fen Ning reached out and touched her chin. How do you know? He was not surprised by these things. After all, Fen Ning's own background was not simple. The more people like him, the more they saw, and those who were well covered on the surface might be filthy underneath. Fen Ning's feelings towards the Chen family. Fen Ning was not interested in these old things from Chen Tan, but he liked hearing Lily talk about them. She usually didn't talk much in front of him, but he didn't expect that she would also inquire about these gossips like other girls behind his back. Fen Ning, unable to help laughing, she held Lily's hand tightly and moved it aside. The two simply stood outside the coffee shop, found a shady corner, and talked about the Chen family. Isn't it Chen Leilei's birthday last time? I guess her father wanted to take the opportunity to introduce that girl, but an accident happened at that time. He simply told Fen Ning what happened that day, and Fen Ning heard this. At this time, the smile on his face slowly faded away. He had seen a lot of filth, but it was rare for the Chen family to make such a fuss and look so ugly. Lily said the guess in her mind. Out. There should be other purposes, but more probably it is to make you anger the Chen family and vent her anger. After she finished speaking, she realized that Fen Ning didn't respond for a while. Lily turned her head to look, but her face was just blank. As soon as he turned around, he was picked up by Fen Ning and dragged into a corner. You, daughter-in-law, you actually. At this moment, Fen Ning no longer had the cool aura as before, but his face was so red that it seemed like he could bleed. His hands holding Lily were trembling. When he spoke, he looked around with a guilty conscience and looked a little angry. I told you not to associate with that woman. His voice was trembling when he spoke. At first, Lily thought he was referring to herself, saying that he didn't like to hear these gossips about the Chen family. Fen Ning held her face tightly, and Lily struggled for a moment, trying to get her face out of his palm. When she came out, he held her tighter, and her blushing face was clearly reflected in his eyes. Fen Ning glanced at her and lowered his head. After a while, he tried to remain calm. Raising her head, Lily reached out to pull his arm. We won't interact with each other anymore, and I don't care about her family's affairs. Is this what I'm talking about? Fen Ning couldn't help shouting. The tendons on the side of his neck were twitching. After he finished shouting, he seemed to realize that his voice was louder. The originally red face seemed to be dripping with blood now. He gritted his teeth, lowered his head and moved closer to Lily, whispering, how can you look at other people's photos? How can you look at other people's photos? I haven't even let you see it. He gritted his teeth as he spoke, feeling a little embarrassed and a little aggrieved. You actually saw his body first, and I didn't even see it, and I didn't even show it to you. Fen Ning was really stimulated. At this moment, he felt sour, bitter, and angry. He had been dating Lily for more than 5 years. In these 5 years, he had seen and touched the girl in front of him. Except for the last line of defense, he had no one. There were traces of him all over her body, but she was afraid that he would not be able to control himself at that time. He really wanted to keep their first time together on the wedding night, so every time he was impulsive, he would leave his wife behind. Fen Ning wrapped her up in a quilt, not daring to let her see her. Fen Ning was afraid that she was not strong enough, but she didn't expect that Lily would see other men's naked bodies at this moment, and according to her, Chen Leilei framed her. When I became my sister, I was not yet a man. At this moment, Fen Ning felt like crying. He was reluctant to teach Lily a lesson, so he could only turn his anger on Chen Leilei. He wished he could rush into the coffee shop and strangle the woman to death. He was so depressed that he could not speak. She had no choice but to grab Lily's hand and put it into her mouth. In the end, she still didn't want to bite it. She stuck out her tongue and licked the palm of her hand. It was probably itchy. She tried desperately to retract her hand, but Fen Ning held it back to prevent her from getting it. The flesh in the palm of her hand was no softer and tender than other places. When she licked and bit it, she wouldn't feel any pain even if she exerted some strength. Fen Ning rubbed his teeth twice and watched her struggle and twist around like a bug. After catching the person securely, he said angrily, "What's there to see? I've never seen anything good. You haven't even seen me." The more he thought about it, the more depressed he became. Only then did Lily realize what he was angry about. She was dumbfounded and struggled to pull her hand back. "Then you am I the first person to see it? To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come." Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 725. When saying this, Lily obviously wanted to laugh. Adolescent boys are somewhat curious about the opposite sex. Fen Ning is full of energy and can't help but move when he is with her. Lily doesn't believe that such an energetic Fen Ning, who is still in his teenage years, can hold back. It is natural to be impulsive when you are young. As soon as she asked this question, Fen Ning fell silent. His originally tanned face began to turn dark red quickly, but he still pretended to be indifferent and turned his head. His side face looked extremely serious, his lips were pressed into a straight line, and his eyelids refused to blink, but Lily was close to him, and if she looked closely, she could notice something strange about him. His body was extremely stiff, and his heartbeat was as fast as a rabbit living in his chest. He was jumping desperately at the moment. Lily rubbed her palms on Fen Ning's legs. He pursed his lips tightly and kept silent. His thighs, her vaginal muscles tensed instinctively because of her touch. She clearly saw her little movement, and her body stiffened but refused to turn her head back. Seeing his appearance, Lily's mind seemed to be struck by lightning, and she subconsciously asked, "You haven't seen it?" At first, Lily just talked casually, but Fen Ning's eyelids trembled at that moment, and Lily was stunned. "You haven't seen it," she was more sure when she spoke this time, and Fen Ning turned around. He didn't dare to look at her. At this moment, he tried his best to put on a cold expression, but he couldn't calm down after tensing up for a while. He lowered his head and leaned towards Lily's shoulder with some embarrassment. "I didn't look." "What's going on?" "I don't want to look at other people's problems, and they're not you." He put his hands around Lily's waist, with a bit of grievance in his eyes. "There used to be breaks in school. It's just that Fen Ning was practicing when others were taking a break. At that time, a group of half-grown young men had also become curious about the bodies of the opposite sex. Whenever there was a break, a group of students would rush out of the school and occasionally bring some good things with them. Stuff comes back. When a group of people gathered together to share, everyone was as excited as anything. Fen Ning looked at the wretched looks of others and stayed away every time. It's not that he is impulsive. If there was no one in his heart, maybe he would have fun with everyone and not take this matter seriously, but he had someone in his heart, and Fen Ning had plans and ideas. After that, even though several of the plans he made when he dated Lily were despised by her, he still had plans for their future in his heart. "I have never been laughed at by Lily." Fen Ning stopped writing plans, but he knew in his heart when he would complete his goal and when he would marry her. For the vow he made when he was a boy in his heart, he even dared not look at Lily sometimes, so how could it be possible? "Will you go see other women?" The movie couldn't be more beautifully staged. But he didn't care about those women, and they weren't his, so what was the use of looking at them? He set his sights on Lily seriously, and felt in his heart that no one could be better than Lily. Naturally, other women were no longer interested. Instead of looking at such things, it was better for him to think more about the free time. "Wife, listen to her voice a few more times. Everyone named Chen has led you into trouble." Fen Ning now thought of Lily seeing other men's bodies, and felt a little angry and depressed. All this is entirely Chen Lele's fault. There was something wrong with that woman. Everyone knew that family scandals should not be made public, but she seemed to be deeply afraid that others would not know about this scandal, so she openly exposed these things in front of everyone. If the identity of her illegitimate sister is exposed, even that woman's reputation will be bad. With the same surname of Chen, what good impression can Chen Lele leave on others? The key is that she took revenge and even caused Lily to look at someone else first. No, let's get the certificate today. I'll replace the ring for you later. The more Fen Ning thought about it, the angrier he became. His expression turned green and white for a while. He pulled Lily before he stood up. He had already prepared to get the ring today. After getting the ring and putting it on Lily, he took the marriage certificate first, and the two of them quickly did what they had to do. They didn't expect that such a twist and surprise would happen at this moment, not to mention that he would also know such a disturbing incident. Thing. He said that the wind was like the rain, and he dragged Lily towards the parking garage opposite the coffee shop. He looked dazed all the way. Apparently Fen Ning had already inquired about the place where the marriage was registered. After starting the car, he even connected the navigation system. He didn't even call it out. He turned the steering wheel and the car rushed out. Lily glanced at him. Stop making trouble, Fen Ning. I haven't gotten anything for the wedding yet. Marriage requires a household registration book and ID card. Today Fen Ning, when she came out to get the ring, she didn't tell her that she needed to prepare these things. She had nothing at the moment, and even if she went to the Civil Affairs Bureau, she would be asked to come out. Hearing this, Fen Ning's right hand holding the steering wheel first rubbed his trouser legs twice. Lily had done this little trick before. Although he pretended to be nonchalant, sweat could be seen faintly on the steering wheel. The traces left behind, the place he held looked like it had just been washed with water. Obviously, he was not as calm as he showed. Deep down, he was still the same as before, but his many years of military service had made him calmer. It's not like he couldn't hold back his anger before. Look there. Fen Ning wiped the sweat from his hands on his trouser legs, raised his chin and pointed in the direction of Lily, and raised the corners of his mouth proudly. I've been ready for a long time. Your registered permanent residence is with the school, and you haven't moved back to your hometown yet. I have already brought your ID card when I go back to school to pack your things. When did your brother Ning do things that made people worry about you? When it comes to marriage, he seems to have forgotten the shadow of Lily just seeing a sex movie at Chen Lele's house, and starts to shine again. As for my household registration, I moved when I joined the army. I'm ready when I come back this time, and my ID card is also here. He was indeed prepared. Lily was speechless by what he said, and now she actually refuted it at all. Not a word came out. Now that things have happened, Fen Ning really wants to marry her, and Chen Lele does not exist in his heart. The development of things this time is different from that in the plot. Marrying Fen Ning is okay. It seems that he will not agree if she doesn't marry him. It was a matter of time, and Lily remained silent. She didn't ask Fen Ning what his family thought about this matter. She shouldn't force herself on these matters. Sometimes it's not a good thing for a woman to be as arrogant as the original owner. Lily is not a really young and ignorant girl. She knows that some things are not suitable for her to stand out. In the original plot, Fen Ning was able to support Chen Lele. Even though Chen Lele's reputation was not good, the Feng family could still welcome her into the house. Son. If Fen Ning wants to marry her, he should also have the ability to handle these things well. So she ignored him. Fen Ning prepared all the information, and Lily nodded and remained silent. Fen Ning liked her attitude very much. Lily looks calm, but in fact she knows how to measure. She knows when to rely on Fen Ning and trust him. She believes that Fen Ning can handle the Feng family's opinions well, so she doesn't mention or say anything, and has no unfounded worries. There is no needless trouble. It is only natural to rely on him like that. I had never doubted it. This feeling made Fen Ning happy from the bottom of his heart. I wonder if beauty is in the eye of the beholder. When Fen Ning thought of this, he couldn't help but laugh again. In the Civil Affairs Bureau, the two signed their signatures and were rushed to take photos. In the studio, there was only a simple red set at the back, but Fen Ning, who had always been carefree and unruly, became inexplicably nervous again. When taking pictures, his face was tense and he couldn't smile at all. When he didn't speak, his expression was still a bit scary. The light shone on the two people's faces. The photographer looked at him several times without hesitating to speak. He just saw Fen Ning's tall figure and the cold temperament on his body, but he didn't dare to talk. Generally, newlyweds sit side by side. The woman sits slightly forward. The photographer would even ask the two of them to get closer and smile, but at this moment Fen Ning was very close to Lily, almost holding her in his arms. One hand was solemnly clenched into a fist and placed on the thigh. The newlyweds wore suits and ties and brought many grooms. The bride came here wearing a camouflage uniform like this. Even the bride looked like she had not dressed up yet and looked barefaced, which made the photographer shake his head. Fortunately, both of them were young and had good foundations. Except for the fact that Fen Ning didn't have a smile on his face, the photographer thought about it and pressed the shutter. Pay the money and wait 10 minutes to get the photo and hand it over, stamp it with a steel seal. When the two signed, they were actually a couple in the legal sense, but they hadn't gotten the book yet. Photography. After the teacher took the photo, he shook his head and walked out. Lily stood up and wanted to pay. As soon as she moved, the arm that was originally holding her arms tightened. Fen Ning still maintained his stiff posture, a little panic. Daughter-in-law, I can't move, my legs are numb. He had never been so nervous before. He didn't even dare to blink when he took the photo just now, for fear that the photo would not look good. Now his eyes were so dry that the photographer, the moment he pressed the shutter, he was much more nervous than others. His body was stiff and he had exerted too much force. He couldn't relax at this time. He looked down at Lily with a dull expression. What should I do? Then we just sit here and don't pay. We don't get the photos or seals. We don't get the book. We'll just sit there for a while and go home. Lily had a whole set of ways to deal with him. As soon as she said this, she was shouting that she couldn't move her legs just now. Fen Ning stood up immediately, but he was still nervous. When he left the small room, he even had the same hands and feet. His steps were very weird. Lily slowly stood up and saw him like this, and couldn't help laughing. After paying the money and waiting for 10 minutes to get the photo, Fen Ning could not sit still during these 10 minutes. He went to rush the person several times. He was tall and strong. He was very bluffing when his expression was cool, and he looked arrogant when he was not smiling. He looked completely unapproachable, which put a lot of pressure on people. In fact, others didn't know that he was actually nervous at the moment. The middle-aged man who took the photo was so angry that he dared not speak. When the photo came out, Fen Ning's face turned dark. In front of the red background, he was holding Lily hostage. His face was very ugly, and there was no hint of wedding joy. With a fierce look. The Lily next to him is very photogenic. Even if she is not powdered, her face is beautiful and her indifferent temperament can be seen through the photo. She leans quietly in his arms, as if it is natural. Fen Ning, he didn't like to see himself like that, but he liked Lily's photos very much. She had hardly changed in the past 5 years. He watched her come from youth, just like guarding a fruit seedling, waiting for her to bloom. Result. Fen Ning's fingers gently stroked Lily's photo. The person who just shouted that his body was stiff and couldn't move now softened his movements and expressions. He didn't take this photo well because he was too nervous just now. She didn't express the joy in his heart, but the mood was very good. She stayed with him quietly. It seemed that the two of them would sit together like this until they grow old. Lily's photo was so beautiful that Fen Ning felt vaguely regretful that he shouldn't have put on such a face just now, and wanted to shout that he should take the photo again, but it was stuck in his throat. Roll it around the base of your tongue twice and swallow. He was willing to retake his own photo, but he was reluctant to destroy this photo of the two of them. This photo had a different meaning to Fenning. But he was still a little unwilling to give up, and saw that the photographer had already adjusted several photos. After putting it into the machine and neatly cutting it into several parts, he hesitated. How about rephotographing me and merging it with my wife later? The photographer, who had never heard such an unbelievable request before, pushed up his glasses frame in disbelief and looked up at him. Fenning squinted his eyes and pointed at his face. You photograph me like this, and I can't see the joy of wedding at all. Do you think this is okay? The photographer suddenly felt so wronged, and all this had nothing to do with him. Fenning himself didn't smile, and he showed such a fierce look. It was not his instigation, not to mention that he looked very scary in the first place, and his demeanor and temperament are not easy to mess with. How dare the photographer remind him at that time? Moreover, the photos were all taken, and he even asked for retakes and composite photos. This was the first time I heard that wedding photos would be composite. The photographer was about to cry and turned to stare at Lily, speechless. Stop making trouble. Lily suppressed her laughter and pulled Fenning. The composite photo was not taken by you and me, so what's the point of it no matter how beautiful it is? Fenning turned to look at her. He looked a little depressed, but this is the only time we took a photo together, and it was taken like this. I know in my heart that you are good looking. He had never cared about what he looked like in the past. Even Lily has known him for all these years. I have never seen him look in the mirror, even in his youth, when he loved to wear long hair and look like a rock and roll figure. He was dressed in a nondescript manner. But Lily had never seen him look in the mirror, and she didn't expect that he would be so concerned about his appearance this time. Lily's words quickly comforted Fenning. He thought that if he could take good photos alone, then he would have to rely on someone else's computer to synthesize his daughter-in-law. Obviously he could hold her with confidence, but it would be unjust and unreasonable, let alone the two of them getting married. And he didn't want the photo to be a composite one. Fenning struggled for a while, but decided to ask Lily to take a photo again. The marriage was up to him. If he wanted to take the photo again, Lily would be up to him. But then the photographer pressed the shutter several times. Fenning didn't know whether it was because of nervousness. His face became uglier every time. On the contrary, Lily's photos got better and better every time. When a lot of results came out, Fenning became gloomy. He looked at the faces and picked them back and forth, but the one he took the first photo with was the one he liked. The first time the photo was taken in one go, it felt a little more comfortable than the deliberate posing later. Fenning had a cold face and held the photo silently. Have you made your choice, sir? There are also newlyweds who are coming to register for marriage today. They were not busy at first, but because Fenning wanted to take a few more photos, a large group of young people were already waiting behind him. Now they were anxiously peeking in, and the photographer couldn't bear it. After finally asking, Fenning took out the money and put it down. He took out a bag and scanned all the photos into the bag. After thinking about it, he leaned over to look at the base image on the cameraman's computer. After reaching out to delete it, he looked at it again. After looking at the photographer's camera, I found that there were no photos of the two of them, so I left with satisfaction. Back then, he didn't want others to see Lily's photos, and would rather just smile at her hand every day. Now he would naturally not be stupid enough to leave evidence of their wedding photos, even if he was by Lily's side. I don't want to. This situation is like a squirrel finding a pine cone for the winter and hiding it like a miser, for fear of being smelled by other squirrels. His bad behavior made the photographer originally want to take this pine cone away. The idea of developing a photo of the two of them and pressing it under the glass as a template came to nothing. He took the photo and went to the office. As soon as the materials were handed in, the clerk quickly took out 2 red notebooks, and photos of the 2 of them were pasted on them. When the steel seal fell, Fen Ning felt like he had been hanging for several years. My heart finally dropped. When he took the 2 notebooks, his hands were very cold. He touched them carefully, then turned to look at Lily and smiled stupidly. "Daughter-in-law, I seem to be unable to walk again. Shall we go sit over there?" There was joy and sorrow in the Civil Affairs Bureau. Some people came to be affectionate and receive certificates, while others came to separate with cold faces. These 2 groups seemed to have a sense of territoriality. They sat separately, and a large temporary resting chair in the middle was empty. After he came out, Fen Ning's legs were soft, and every step felt like stepping on cotton. He placed the 2 marriage certificates closest to his heart. He reached out to touch them from time to time. The more he touched them, the more at ease his expression became. Walking was not as soft as before. When she reached the chair, Lily sat down first. Fen Ning did not sit down. Instead, she took Lily's hand and squatted in front of her. He is tall and has long legs. Even though he is squatting now, his eyes are not any lower than Lily's. His knees are pressed against Lily's knees, and his palms wrap her hands in his palms. "Daughter-in-law, you are mine, I'm my wife." His voice was soft, and his Adam's apple rolled up and down twice. "I have wronged you. I didn't propose to you, and I didn't prepare a flower ring for you." He actually planned it, but I don't know if it happened from the encounter. From the moment he met Lily, he was always making plans, but his plans could never keep up with the changes. When he confessed his love to Lily, it was the first time that he really paid attention to a girl. At that time, it was just out of boyish nature. If he said he liked her, he really didn't like her much. He just wanted to say that he liked her and he fell in love. He made a plan. Finally she poured down a bucket of cold water. When they first went on a date, he made a plan for a musical dinner, but a heavy rain finally ruined his plan. Thinking of the original scene, Fen Ning couldn't help but laugh. In order to think about it, Fen Ning to propose to Lily, he had many ideas in his mind. He even wanted to strictly follow his own wishes at first and give Lily an unforgettable wedding. However, Chen Lele changed the ring size, which disrupted his preparation. Fen Ning couldn't wait any longer and took Lily to get the certificate first. He was a little anxious, but he had no regrets. Although every step the 2 took was different from what he had imagined, Lily was his wife after all. Although there were some regrets, these regrets were not as good as the joy that she truly belonged to him. Fen Ning rubbed Lily's fingers and held her palm against his chest. He had a lot to say, but at this moment he opened his mouth and couldn't say anything. He wanted to thank Lily for being willing to marry him. He wanted to say that in the future, he would make up for Lily as much as what others had. He wanted to tell Lily that he would treat her well in the future so that she would never regret marrying him. He wanted to say he talks a lot, but now he opens his mouth. He was beaten in a fight when he was young and his nose was bruised and his face was swollen. He was in terrible pain but pretended not to care on the surface. Behind his back, he gritted his teeth but fought back. He who would rather tolerate his fault than shed tears, now he is covering his face. With the 2 thin paper leaves in his arms and the soft hands in his hands, Fen Ning only felt that his nose was sore and his eyes were a little warm. He didn't understand what love was. When he was young, he sang songs about love and love. At that time, young people didn't know what it was like to be sad. Who would have thought that the quiet girl he met once by chance would be his first time? When she sings a love song to express her love, even the lyrics are copied from love poems. In the end, she will really become his sweetheart. The words he sang casually at the beginning turned out to be a knot in his life many years later. He could not untie or cut it, and it bound him tighter and tighter. He even accepted it happily. Today, Fen Ning still doesn't understand what love is. He just hopes that every day he lives, he can hold her hand. Every time he dreams back at midnight, he thinks of her face. He likes to see her smile, but he doesn't want to see her. She cried, wanting to hold her in her arms, wanting to hold her in the palm of her hand. Fen Ning didn't know if this was love for her. The man who casually dared to say he loved Zhou Beihe once when he saw her was now mature and sensible. But I didn't dare to speak. Lily sighed silently, lowered her head to rest on Fen Ning's head, and Fen Ning hugged her into his arms. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 726. When they came out of the Civil Affairs building again, the two of them had changed from a couple to a serious couple. Fen Ning was wearing sunglasses and had a forced and cold look, but he couldn't suppress the raised corners of his mouth. Go and choose first. Ring, then go back to Feng's house for dinner, and we'll go back as soon as we're done. He had made all arrangements, but when he said that he was going home, his eyes were a little nervous and a little shy. The matter of the ring is still a knot in Fen Ning's heart. Chen Lele has not finished the matter yet. He originally wanted to give Lily a wedding that was no worse than others. His wife should get better and more than others, so he didn't choose from so many ready-made rings. He finally chose 2 large diamonds to make a custom-made ring, so that she could hold her head high in the future, but he didn't expect that something like that would go wrong. The thought of this made Fen Ning feel sick from the bottom of his heart. What Chen Lele did was not only destroying 2 rings, but also his plans and calculations for the future. He would ask the Chen family for an explanation on this matter. Now that they are married and the ring has not been decided yet, Fen Ning feels depressed just thinking about it. He can't wait to have the ring made again. It has been his wish since he was young to put the ring on Lily's ring finger, even if it is taken. Zheng but something was missing. Fen Ning always felt a little regretful, so he still wanted to choose a ring for Lily again, but this time he did not choose a customized ring. The two visited the mall again. Fen Ning spent a long time choosing this time, and finally selected a finished ring. After trying it on Lily's finger, it just fit and no adjustment was needed. When he swiped his card to pay, he heard the salesperson say when the price of the ring was raised, although it was far more expensive than an ordinary ring, it was less than 1/10 of the previous custom-made ring. Fen Ning is still a little bit worried about this. Lily took his arm and stretched out her palm to look at it. Under the light, the diamond was wrapped, and it was not a particularly big diamond. Naturally, it was not as exquisite as the previous pair of diamond rings called Lover's Eyes, but it suited her very well. The small ring body paired with her slender fingers looked beautiful and simple. Fen Ning saw her actions. He also stretched out his hand. The joints of his palms were much larger than Lily's, and they looked full of strength. His ring was slightly wider than Lily's ring body. Paired with his bronze skin, it looked majestic and harmonious. Their palms together, it's indescribably natural. I think this is good. Fen Ning, I don't care whether the ring is expensive or not, otherwise I wouldn't have worn that silver ring in the first place. Fen Ning's seriousness and care in choosing the ring, this attitude, far more valuable than money. Lily rarely opened her mouth to praise Fen Ning, and now she opened her mouth. Fen Ning's face couldn't help but show an expression of wanting to laugh but holding it back. He did mind a little at first. The pair of silver rings he bought for Lily when he was a teenager a few years ago. At that time, he impulsively just wanted to say goodbye to her. He made a long-term promise. At that time, his heart was far more valuable than money. Later, although the pair of rings were still a treasure in his heart, Fen Ning thought about giving Lily a better one when they got married, but he didn't. Think of the good things come in a long way. Fortunately, things are finally settled now, and Fen Ning went to pay the money. When the two came out of the mall, it was already getting late. After a hard day today, Fen Ning didn't want to waste time wandering outside anymore, so he held Lily by the hand. The small bag that originally held the jewelry box was hooked on his finger, and he took out the phone with one hand. He called back to Feng's house. He was preparing to tell the Feng family in advance that he would go back for dinner. His tone was cheerful. Someone seemed to be asking a few questions on the other end of the phone. He turned to look at Lily, smiled at her, and responded with force. He nodded, but it was a pity that the person on the other end of the phone couldn't see it. When talking to others, Fen Ning stopped being stupid and stopped talking too much nonsense. After saying a few words, he hung up the phone. This is Lily's first time to go to the Feng family. She has been dating Fen Ning for many years since she entered the mission. She has dealt with Aunt Wang of the Feng family once, but she has never met anyone from the Feng family. I had already obtained my marriage certificate and went to the Feng family for the first time. The Feng family was in the military compound of the Special Administrative Region. In terms of luxury and area, it was not as luxurious as Chen Leilei's home, but here in an era when everything in Beijing has been transformed into high-rise buildings, the military area where the Feng family is located still retains an antique atmosphere. Every few steps there are soldiers with live ammunition standing guard. They are heavily guarded. No one dares to approach them from a distance. There are not many houses in this area. The environment and location were inspected by Feng Shui masters when they were built. It is not comparable to the Chen family's carefully decorated manner that still exudes craftsmanship. There is an additional guard booth in front of each courtyard. When Fen Ning drove back, the little soldier in the guard booth confirmed his identity. He removed the security guard, saluted him, and let him go. I wonder if it was because Fen Ning called back in advance, so when the two got off the car, many people from Feng's family were there. A room full of people, both men and women, wearing olive green military uniforms, watched Fen Ning come back with a bag and Lily. After the nanny opened the door, everyone was stunned and stared at Fen Ning, who became a little annoyed and angry. "Mom and Dad, I'm back, and I brought your daughter-in-law with me." He grabbed Lily's hand tightly, as if he was afraid that she would be nervous because of the attention of these people. When people looked over, he turned his eyes and stared back. Until these words were spoken, a boy of 17 or 18 years old, wearing a camouflage uniform like Fen Ning, couldn't help but come up to him. "Brother Ning, you came back with a bag." The small paper bag containing the ring was now his daughter was still hooked on his finger. He had just gotten married and bought a ring. Half of his life's wishes were fulfilled in one fell swoop. Fen Ning was so excited that he forgot to marry her after getting in the car, thinking of taking his wife back with him. He didn't take it off while driving home, but now he brought it back to the house. "Since when have you been so polite?" The boy naturally saw the ring brand's logo on the bag, but he deliberately laughed at him and pretended to reach out to pick it up. "What gift should I bring when I go back to my home?" In the past, Fen Ning was too arrogant. Now it was rare to see a woman by his side. The two of them obviously looked like they had gone shopping and Fen Ning had to pay the bills and still pick up the things. When had he ever gone shopping in the past? Ever since he was young, he had been impatient when Feng's mother sometimes asked him to accompany him to visit relatives, let alone go shopping with others. Afterwards, he would carry the bag as evidence. Everyone in the Feng family pretended not to see Fen Ning's embarrassment. Let the young man tease Fen Ning. "You're welcome. This is the wedding ring for me and my wife." Fen Ning was so thick-skinned that people laughed at him. He was a little embarrassed at first, but he soon calmed down, and instead he proudly wore it together with Lily. The hand with the ring stretched out and waved it in front of the young man. The other hand holding the bag was raised so that he wouldn't touch it. "It's very simple for you to ask for a gift. My wife, sit down first and I want to give it to him, a separate gift for him to savor over time." He let go of Lily, pointed to the spot on the sofa that had been vacated by the young man after he stood up, and pushed her to sit down. As soon as he let go of Lily's palm, he caught the young man who wanted to hide after hearing this with a ferocious expression. Dragging him outside, It wasn't long before the sound of bang bang like hitting sandbags was heard in the house, accompanied by the young man's dissatisfied wailing, "You beat others when you get married," bullying the younger ones. No one in the room had any intention of going out to mediate. The Feng family's education is that boys should be beaten more often. It is better to be beaten by one's own people when they are young than to be beaten by others when they are older. If this is frustrating, I can't even defeat him, I still need help from my family, and I won't be able to become a great person when I grow up. Everyone in the Feng family is in the army. Fen Ning also fought like this when he was young. The one outside the voice of training was not taken seriously. The man and woman who had just been called parents by Fen Ning were sitting on the sofa. The middle-aged man was wearing a Chinese tunic suit and had short hair. In terms of appearance, the older Fen Ning was. Ning was very similar to him, with a somewhat serious expression. Fen Ning's mother was also wearing a military uniform. The two girls were leaning behind her now. No one in the room spoke, they just stared at Lily and looked at her. After a while, Fen Ning's mother asked, "You have been together for several years, and now Fen Ning he just brought you home. This is his own choice. He will live well in the future." She did not mention the past. At this time, Fen Ning and Lily had already obtained their marriage certificate. It was a done deal. It would be embarrassing for everyone to mention the past again. Lily in response, Feng's mother spoke at the beginning, and then a middle-aged woman smiled and started asking people to prepare tea. The Feng family valued rules. Nowadays, young people are yearning for Western-style weddings when they get married. Fen Ning and Lily took it. The wedding has not been held yet, but the Feng family hopes that the two of them will have a traditional wedding. At this time, they want Lily and Fen Ning to serve tea first. By the time Fen Ning finished beating the person and put down his rolled-up sleeves and entered the house, Lily had already served tea to Fen Ning's parents, and Feng's mother was discussing with her family how to hold the wedding. "Daughter-in-law, put the ring on me." Fen Ning took out the wedding ring from his pocket. When he hit the person, he was afraid that the ring would be touched by using too much force. He took the ring off before beating the person, and then took it back again. He came out and asked Lily to put it on him. The beaten boy came limping in from the outside. When he heard this, he became very angry. "You still have a wife, do you have any evidence?" Fen Ning turned around and glared at him. The young man was beaten so hard that one of his eyes was swollen and he could not open one eye. His eyes were one big and one small. When he saw it, he shrank his shoulders and hurriedly hid outside the door. Fen Ning sneered. He was also the one who got the certificate now. He was about to reach out and touch the marriage certificate on his chest. But when he took out the certificate, he suddenly remembered the photo of himself on the marriage certificate. He regretted taking it out, but before he could put it into his arms again, Fen Mu took the marriage certificate and opened it to look at it. At first she was the only one laughing, but later when everyone gathered around and saw, they couldn't help laughing. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 727. This time Lily came to the Feng family for the first time, and was not questioned or treated coldly, because the photo on Fen Ning's marriage certificate became the focus of everyone's teasing, and people stared at him during the meal. Lily ate her meal calmly, but Fen Ning just put down the bowls and chopsticks and pulled her out before quickly retreating. "We will take wedding photos again in the future. Choose a good photographer to take good photos of us," he said with a sullen face, as if he was swearing. The Feng family had just been holding back their laughter. Now Fen Ning still looked ugly when he thought about it. Obviously she was still a little worried about the photo, and Lily couldn't help but laugh. He drove back, turning his head to look at Lily from time to time along the way. After being looked at for a long time, Lily also turned to look at him. Once his gaze was discovered, Fen Ning felt a little embarrassed and quickly turned his head away. After leaving, it was still early when he returned home. He diligently filled the bath water for Lily, helped her find a nightgown, and urged her to take a bath quickly. After a tiring day, she went out to meet Chen Lele in the morning and has just returned home. Lily is indeed a little tired after a day of hard work. The weather outside is hot, and she is very uncomfortable with sweat sticking to her body at the end of the day. Lily has washed away all the sweat. When the fatigue came out, the air conditioner had been turned on in the room, the indoor temperature had dropped, and Fen Ning was nowhere to be seen. The sheets on the big bed in the bedroom have been replaced with white sheets and duvet covers, and rose petals have been scattered all over the bed. The room is filled with the fragrance of roses. I think of what he said today, that he would give me flowers and rings. To make up for it, Lily took a towel and wiped her hair before leaving the door. Soon she heard the sound of water flowing from the other bathroom. She returned to the room and found a hair dryer to dry her hair. Fen Ning was still in the toilet and did not come out. Lily found an English novel and read it. Looking out from the curtains that were not completely closed, she had a panoramic view of the entire night view of the imperial capital. The location of this house was very good, and the neon lights in the distance were very beautiful. Lily was fascinated by it. He didn't notice the passage of time. It wasn't until he had read more than half of the novel that the bedroom door was pushed open. Fen Ning cautiously poked his head in first. His eyes turned around nervously when he saw Lily. When I was sitting on the corner bay window, reading a book with great interest, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, then walked into the room softly. What are you looking at? Are you so fascinated? Fen Ning's voice was hoarse and strange. He reached out and touched Lily's hair. After staying in the air-conditioned room for a long time, her cheeks and hair were a little cold. Fortunately, she was wearing a long-sleeved nightgown. His arms were still wrapped in clothes, but his calves were barefoot on the window. Girls' feet are much prettier than men's feet. Lily's toes are not painted with any nail polish, but her toenails have a healthy pink color. When Fen Ning was talking, he sat next to Lily. When he saw those feet, he couldn't look away anymore. Is it cold? He couldn't help but reach out and touch Lily's feet. His palms were extremely hot, which was in sharp contrast to Lily's feet. Fen Ning's palms were calloused by years of training, and he touched the instep of Lily's feet. It felt like her feet were weak and boneless. The softness made the suppressed fire in his heart suddenly surge up. Fen Ning took the book away from Lily's hand, put one hand under her armpit, and the other around her knee. He easily picked her up and hugged her sideways. When he just came back, Fen Ning was still thinking that the two of them were getting married today, and was so excited that she wished she could return home immediately. But when he actually heard Lily entering the bathroom to take a bath, he became inexplicably nervous again. When he returned to Feng's house in the evening, he called someone to send flowers home, and tore off the petals while Lily was taking a bath. Unexpectedly, when things came to an end, he hid in the bathroom and didn't dare to come out. Now he finally came out. Lily was held in his arms, light and airy, as if he was holding a child. This girl has been hidden by him since she was a girl. The girl in my heart will finally belong to him. The thought of shrinking back slowly started to rise again. Fen Ning put Lily on the bed. Seeing her turning around and trying to crawl towards the head of the bed, he reacted quickly and reached out to grab her legs. He only gently touched her legs. Drag, her body that had just crawled out 2 steps was dragged in front of him again, and the bathrobe slid up, revealing a pair of white and tender thighs. Involuntarily, Fen Ning thought of the goose yellow skirt she wore back then. When she stayed at Chen's house for a night, she actually looked a little haggard, but when she wore the skirt, her slender waist was slender. Legs, thinking about it now, her lower abdomen seemed to explode. Fen Ning's eyes were a little red, and he pressed her legs with his hands. He opened his mouth and wanted to kiss her thighs. Lily subconsciously wanted to shrink her legs, but she didn't know. It wasn't because he was so fascinated by those legs that he escaped from her at this moment. Even though Fen Ning reacted quickly afterwards, he still only grabbed her ankles, and finally his lips fell on her legs, tightly. Then it got out of hand. Fen Ning knelt on the bed, stretched out his hand to turn Lily over, turned her body over, and pressed her up. Over the years of dating, I have some actions to kiss me, but to really be intimate. Fen Ning was a married couple, but Fen Ning had no experience. He restrained Lily under his body, and his hands were still trembling, but before he could touch the straps of the bathrobe, Lily frowned. A thorn pricked me. Fen Ning was breathing heavily now. When he heard this, he was stunned and couldn't react. Lily repeated it again. Originally, his mind was blank and he couldn't think. Only then did Fen Ning react and hurriedly rolled to the side. He picked up Lily, and the thorns on his back were indeed inserted into the bathrobe. When he just tore off the rose petals, he was absent-minded, thinking about the intimacy between the two of them, and couldn't rest at all. He didn't notice that a branch was also left on the bed by him, and now it pricked the lily. Fen Ning felt distressed in his heart. He was depressed again. He originally wanted to be romantic, but the lack of romance at this time made him lose most of the courage he had just summoned up. "Are you hurt?" He stretched out his hand to pull off the thorns, but he was afraid that there would still be some on the bed. He hurriedly hugged the lily down and shook the quilt. The rose petals on his head flew up in the sky like raindrops, and they only shook 2 or 3 times. The bed is already clean. At this moment, Fen Ning didn't care to use something to sweep away the petals. He just motioned Lily over to see if she was injured. The bathrobe on the back was still white, and no blood was seen seeping out. But Fen Ning still felt a little uneasy. There were no charming thoughts in his mind at this moment. When he pulled Lily's clothes, it was not like the moment when his hands were shaking so much and the bathrobe was pulled down by him. Lily's soul was ejected from the original owner's body. A small red mark appeared on her bare back where the thorn was pricked. The skin was a little broken, but no more blood oozed out. The bathrobe was pulled up to her waist. Actually, now only the strap is left to hold it up. Even though her back was turned to Fen Ning, her white skin still had a soft halo under the light. Fen Ning felt distressed at first and moved forward to lick the wound. She smelled of shower gel and shampoo, and the girl's smooth and delicate skin was like the best tasting milk. Fen Ning gradually became heavier. From the original licking of the wound, he gradually became more forceful, kissing his lips along the back. When it reached the waist, the girl's body trembled slightly, and he seemed to be possessed. He turned her body over and jumped on her. What he had not done in the past was completed this time. At first, Fen Ning thought of taking his time, but when things came to an end, he realized that he couldn't help himself. When Lily opened her eyes again, it was already almost afternoon. Her body had been cleaned, but strangely she didn't feel any discomfort. It was probably because Li Yangzi helped her. Fen Ning kept staring at her. He didn't know how long he stared at her. When Lily slowly opened her eyes, their eyes met. It took him a while before he seemed to react. He hurriedly closed his eyes, but the eyelashes were still trembling. Red vines crawled up his upper body. The temperature on his body suddenly rose very high, and the palms of his hands were so hot that they seemed to burn. The room was quiet, and his rapid breathing sounded above Lily's head, and the hot air blew out some trivial things. Her fine hair was dangling on her cheeks and forehead, and it was itching terribly. "Why are you pretending to sleep?" Lily raised her arm and scratched her face. When she was about to scratch her face a second time, Fen Ning reached out and grabbed her wrist. His body was still very tight and stiff, and now he moved gently. Lily pushed her hair aside and touched the mark where she had just scratched the red mark. She was a little embarrassed and pretended to be calm. I didn't pretend to sleep when Lily wanted to look up at him. Lily's face was pressed against his chest, while he pressed his chin on top of her head, his face close to the head of the bed, still trying desperately to press in, until his face was buried in Lily's head. He endured it for a while. The arms holding Lily tightened. "Daughter-in-law, I am very happy." When Fen Ning said the last word, he could hear the vibrating sound. He held it back at first, but it felt like a caterpillar was living in his heart, as if he felt uncomfortable if he didn't do anything or say anything. He held it back. He couldn't help but rub his face on Lily's hair, and his legs restlessly circled Lily's body, rubbing against Lily like a snake. His body tightened tighter and tighter, trapping Lily tightly in his arms. At this moment, Fen Ning was really indescribably excited. It was like he opened a piece of soil in the palm of his hand, buried a seed in it, and watched the seed break through the soil, sprout, grow and bear fruit, until he finally ate the fruit in one bite yesterday. Next, the deliciousness cannot be described in words. It is worth waiting for many years. The feeling of waiting for the ripe fruits is far better than when it was young. The joy in the heart is far greater than the body. He hadn't slept since last night. When Lily fell asleep in the morning, he stared at her and couldn't bear to close his eyes. She snuggled quietly in his arms, with that kind of natural and peaceful look that made Fen Ning feel warm in his heart just thinking about it. As if it were about to overflow. "Are you hungry?" After suppressing the tingling feeling in her heart, Fen Ning couldn't help but kiss Lily's head several times before asking her in a low voice. He didn't sleep last night. He didn't know if he was excited now, but he didn't feel sleepy at all. Lily closed her eyes. She didn't know if she was too hungry. She didn't feel anything in her body, but lying in bed all the time even if she wasn't hungry was not an option. So she nodded and wanted to get up. When she returned to her body, she didn't feel any pain. After a while, she realized that her body was not obeying her control. When she sat up, she always felt that her body was heavy. Fen Ning pushed her. Lily was sure that Li Yangzi should have done something at this moment. She reluctantly put on her shoes and stood up. When I straightened my body, the rose petals under my feet had wilted a lot, and every step felt as light as stepping on clouds. After going to the bathroom to wash up and tidy up, Fen Ning was still holding the sheets and giggling. The sheets that had been changed yesterday were already stained with blood. They were still glaring after drying, but he didn't mind them being dirty. It was as if he was holding some kind of baby bump. Lily couldn't bear it anymore and stretched out her legs to kick him before he reacted. He didn't dare to look at Lily's face. He blushed and lowered his head. He hugged her waist like a baby and buried his head on her chest. In the days after she got the marriage certificate, Lily didn't feel any pain, but she could feel that she and Fen Ning were injured the first time. She bled a lot that day, and Fen Ning never touched her again. But after the relationship became closer, the feeling between the two was obviously different from before. During those few days, Lily was very insensitive to pain, hunger, etc. It was not until 5 or 6 days later that she slowly returned to her original state. Because Fen Ning was a little anxious, he came back this time just for a vacation. He wanted to transfer to Beijing to complete his future work. It would still take a few years, and he only had 2 months of vacation, so the wedding was on the agenda. The two are now truly husband and wife. After getting the marriage certificate, Fen Ning was anxious to get the wedding done. The Feng family should have been prepared for it, and the tedious work had been done in advance. The two took care of it again. I took wedding photos, but I don't know if it was a natural conflict with taking photos. From the beginning, no matter how I took the photos, Fen Ning always felt wrong. He felt uncomfortable all over as he changed into his suit. It was also very awkward to take photos. Later, Lily suggested changing to a military-themed wedding photo. It was probably because he was wearing a familiar uniform that he felt much more natural. After the effect comes out, Fen Ning is naturally heroic, but Lily is not inferior either. Her cool temperament has a unique charm when she wears military uniform. Compared with heavy makeup, this light feeling is like a cup of tea, which makes people appreciate its fragrance more and more. Because of this set of wedding photos, Fen Ning's parents are very satisfied with it. In their opinion, this is much better than learning how to wear a wedding dress and a headband abroad at a young age. The wedding was an old custom. Lily wore a red wide-sleeved top and skirt that was modified to imitate the tang suit. Her hair was tied up with jade hairpins. She had not had her ears pierced in these years, so she did not wear earrings. All her jewelry was worn except for her hair tied up. Apart from that, there are only a pair of bracelets on her wrists. I don't know if it's because she's young and has a good foundation. When applying makeup, she only applied a thin layer of powder, traced her eyebrows, and didn't even use blush. Her good complexion came out naturally. The makeup artist applied lip gloss on Lily. Look. Her plain appearance was too little for the bride to dress up, so she used scissors to cut the makeup brush smaller, dipped it in some bright red lip gloss, and traced a few petals on her forehead. The effect was unexpectedly good. Once those petals were painted on, it was like the finishing touch. A smile of surprise appeared on the makeup artist's face. Before he could speak, two figures in the bride's dressing room looked inside. Look, when he saw Lily, he hurriedly opened the door and came in. Lily, Auntie said you were here, and you are indeed still here. Yang Li and Yu Xiaotian came in. Lily's family only had Zhou's mother and a pair of younger siblings. They were too weak alone, so Fen Ning also the two dormitory roommates were invited for her, but Chen Lele was not invited. Some time ago, he caused trouble for the Chen family. Now Fen Ning felt annoyed even thinking about Chen Lele, let alone inviting her. I probably have never seen Lily wearing makeup in the past, but this time the two classmates were surprised when they came in. In recent years, Western-style weddings have gradually replaced the traditional Chinese rituals, but it's not that China's thousands of years of tradition is inferior to others, it's just that because in modern society, the price of ancient weddings is higher than that of Western weddings. These clothes tailor-made for Lily are all handmade, using different fabrics, and the natural effect is good after wearing them. Just this one on her body with this outfit, you can hold dozens of simple Western-style weddings. After putting it on, the effect is particularly stunning. Yu Xiaotian opened his mouth and was speechless. Lele, she knew she was wrong. She said that her life is not easy now. I hope you can forgive her. Yang Li carefully sat on the stool next to Lily, not daring to move her hands or feet. When she remembered what Chen Lele once said to her was carefully said in front of Lily. Yang Li didn't know what happened between Lily and Chen Lele, but she was a little bit confused when sisters in the same dormitory made such a fuss. Embarrassing, Chen Lele used to treat her well, but now he asked her to help with the conversation. Yang Li was too embarrassed to open her mouth, but Fen Ning's family background was beyond her imagination, so Yang Li seemed a little helpless at the moment. Don't bring up the matter between us anymore. I know it well. Lily didn't want to discuss this issue with Yang Li. Chen Lele plotted against Fen Ning that day. She wanted Fen Ning to destroy the Chen family for her, but Fen Ning's last choice was to help her half-sister. Lily also had the same idea in her heart. The relationship between Chen Lele and her illegitimate sister, the matter originally had nothing to do with the two of them. If she hadn't been so petty and calculating, Lily would have helped as much as she could because of the fact that she was a roommate in the same dormitory in the past, but Chen Lele had been reborn. She doesn't trust anyone but herself, but she has the ability to dig holes, but not the ability to clean up the aftermath, so Lily naturally wants to reciprocate her favor. The Chen family has been troubled several times and has been in a state of distress recently. Chen Lele originally had the advantage of being reborn to trick his half-sister, but Fen Ning came to help. Her advantage was instantly disrupted. The woman who was able to beat her to death in her previous life was not a soft-hearted woman. When Chen Lele was reborn, she just had the upper hand. It did not mean that her IQ had become higher. This time her private, the sister who gave birth to a girl, recovered and got help from Fen Ning again. Now the fight with her is quite even, and the whole Chen family is having a fierce quarrel behind their backs. Chen Lele has no time to think about Fen Ning anymore. That woman is not a fuel-efficient lamp, and she has suffered from Chen Lele. She originally hated her, now I wish I could let Chen Lele die. Recently, Chen Lele was driven almost crazy. Without Chen's father on her side, she could not make any real progress except relying on the advantage of her rebirth to make the woman suffer. It's not like she has a strong foreign aid in the plot. So I'm very anxious right now. Without Fen Ning, she would need help from others. Yang Li was blocked by Lily and looked a little embarrassed. Lele is going to marry Liang Jinjiao. She said she hopes you can go to the wedding. She hasn't given up yet. It's not that Chen Lele hasn't given up on Fen Ning yet. It's that she hasn't completely given up on wooing Fen Ning's forces. Chen Lele needs external help. Only Liang Jinjiao, who was seduced by her after marrying and being reborn, has always been very attracted to her, attempts to help her by using Liang as her backup. After a while, Chen Lele finally married the person she had lost and thought she would never marry. Only she knew what was going on in her heart. It's just that it's impossible for Liang to go against the Chen family because of her, and besides being young and beautiful, which makes Liang Jinjiao fall in love with her, she doesn't have any other leverage to make Liang value her, so she wants Lily to attend her wedding. Let the Feng family also become one of her supporters. Chen Lele now wants to get along with Lily, but she knows that Lily can't see her, so she asks Yang Li for help. Yu Xiaotian was silent on the side. Yang Li took out a jewelry box from her bag and handed it to Lily. This is the ring that Lele changed before. I'm sorry for you, the size is too big. She has already had someone turn it down. Yang Li didn't know what Chen Lele had planned for Fen Ning before. She only knew that the relationship between Chen Lele and Beihe was at loggerheads. Chen Lele asked her to be a lobbyist and gave her a set of imported cosmetics. Yang Li didn't want to be in the same dormitory. The sisters were in such trouble, so they tried their best to mediate. We are all sisters in the same dormitory. If there is any misunderstanding, we can just clear it up. Lily listened to her words for a long time without speaking. It wasn't until the makeup artist painted the flowers between her eyebrows for her that she turned her eyes and looked at Yang Li. Do you have anything else to do today? I'll have someone take you out. Chen Lele. Lily no longer wants to care about the matter. Yang Li obviously got Chen Lele's signal and came prepared to persuade her. Except for the two of them sharing the same dormitory in the first year, the relationship between her and Yang Li was not very good. I don't want to listen to these intimate sisters' inner thoughts. If it weren't for the fact that I later learned that Fen Ning could afford a good car, I'm afraid she and Yang Li would not even be as good as ordinary classmates. Now Yang Li seems to be reluctant to be a lobbyist. She said this calmly. Yang Li's face turned red at first, and then turned pale. She glanced at Lily, and then looked at Yu Xiaotian with some confusion. Yu Xiaotian was silent and didn't speak. Her lips moved. The makeup artist assistant on the side has already picked up the phone. Yang Li came to attend the wedding today because she came with her boyfriend. Her relationship with her boyfriend has become very bad over the past year. She is not from Jingzhou. People, it was okay to be in love at first, but now when it comes to getting married, there are problems in both families, and her boyfriend's family looks down on her. If she attended this wedding and knew that a good friend of hers was marrying into a high-ranking family, her boyfriend's family would have been very excited. If she was kicked out now, Yang Li could almost have a premonition that her boyfriend's family would ask them to break up. After seeing the situation, she now regretted helping Chen Lele as a lobbyist, but she regretted it too late. This small episode did not affect the progress of the wedding. Fen Ning was wearing a standard military uniform and stood upright in the middle of the wedding hall waiting for her. This scene was photographed. After a long time, Fen Ning was a little embarrassed and told Lily, the moment he saw his wife being slowly led from a distance and her hand was placed in his palm, he was so nervous that his heart almost forgot how to beat. At that moment, what he held in his palm was, not just her hand, but also his life's happiness and his life's treasure. No one knew that at that moment, he was bursting into tears. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 728. This mission was too easy. There were no powerful people to deal with, and the original owner had no overwhelming resentment to settle. It was just like a vacation. When Lily returned to the starry sky, she couldn't believe that the mission was completed so easily. Li Yangzi leaned against the chair. Under the starlight, his expression was calm. His eyes were staring at the same place in a daze. There was a strange sense of tranquility before the storm. Somehow, seeing him like this, Lily felt a vague feeling in her heart. My back felt a little cold, and I subconsciously stopped. I'm back at this moment. She is no longer the cautious and timid Lily who just entered the starry sky. After experiencing so many missions, she has grown a lot, but at this time, in front of Li Yangzi, Lily is vaguely her legs felt weak, and she seemed to have returned to the state of mind when she first met Li Yangzi, causing her voice to become softer involuntarily. She spoke, and Li Yangzi, who seemed to be in a daze, raised his head. His long hair was tied up, but it was not secure. The jade crown on his head was crooked and loose, and a few strands of hair were hanging down. His face showed a bit of coquettishness and evil charm in the coldness. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile line, but it quickly disappeared, as if he had just faintly hidden smiles. The smile was like a human illusion. He is very satisfied with this mission. It has been a long time since Li Yangzi told her the original owner's mood like this in his first sentence. Lily's back felt an inexplicable chill. She paused for a while before moving towards him. She guessed that the original owner was satisfied. Yes, after all, she changed the original owner's wish. But it can be considered completed for her, and the love to Fen Ning from marriage can be considered to have a beginning and an end, but this so-called endpoint is different from the original owner's imagination. The original owner had no experience of being forcibly sold in her previous life, nor had she met the husband who ruined her life. Her father, who had harmed her all her life, was also punished for his evil deeds. It should be said that her wish was fulfilled. But when Lily heard Li Yangzi say this, her scalp began to feel numb. You have fulfilled her wish so well. You have made up for her whole life. Although the relationship with Fen is not over, you have made things come true in another unexpected way. Ziahe, this mission is fun. Really? Li Yangzi sat up straight, with his hands clenched into fists and resting on his thighs in the posture of a big horse and a golden sword. Staring at Lily, because she is so satisfied, she decided to give you a blessing. His tone was calm, but underneath the calmness was a storm. Lily was not stupid. She felt it at this moment. He walked towards Li Yangzi with his scalp raised, and his pace was a bit slow at first. Later, she sped up a bit, and when she was still more than 2 meters away from Li Yangzi, she pounced towards Li Yangzi. The distance was a little far away, and she was still close to jumping into Li Yangzi's arms. When she saw that the lily was about to fall to the ground, the person who was sitting still snorted softly, and a breeze blew, and the lily fell. She fell into his arms for a moment, and his whole body was tense at this moment, obviously holding back his anger. Lily's hair flew up. The next moment, he returned to his original position, and the person who was originally held in his arms was restrained by him. Be careful with me too. Li Yangzi narrowed his eyes dangerously, and his gaze fell on Lily's face, thinking that this time she was in love with someone. The anger in my heart surged up layer by layer, accumulating like a huge wave. I want to involve all the lilies. Although his expression was still calm at this time, the strength of the hand holding her waist suddenly decreased and gradually became heavier. He touched you like this. Li Yangzi pointed to her hair, and every time she touched it, Lily shrank in one spot and didn't dare to struggle. The further his hand went down, Lily couldn't help it anymore. No, she tried to ignore Li Yangzi's hand that was rubbing and sliding on her thigh, as if hesitating and trying to restrain himself, and shook her head to argue. It was okay not to say this, but as soon as he said this, Li Yangzi felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. I bumped into you. That's because I pulled you out. He had never tasted this kind of feeling. To be honest, when Lily was doing tasks, someone held her hands around her waist. Even though those bodies were not hers, Li Yangzi still felt unspeakably irritated. These worlds were created by him, but at that moment he wanted to destroy them. I have the intention to go. In the past, people who were too willful and arrogant could get whatever they wanted. I have never felt such a sour taste. The more angry Li Yangzi became, the colder his expression became. But those eyes were terrifyingly dark, like an abyss that was about to suck the soul of a person into it. Lily was speechless when she said this. In fact, the only real experiences she had were those few times, and each time they were with Li Yangzi. At this moment, she could feel that Li Yangzi was a little angry. He was so a calm person, as if his expression remained unchanged despite the collapse of a mountain. This was the first time Lily saw this expression on his face. Although she was nervous, she knew it after seeing his hand on her waist and not moving for a long time. He definitely wasn't going to do anything. She breathed a sigh of relief. Lily was really a little worried about him who had suppressed his anger. In the past, he had no expression on his face and looked cold and aloof. She didn't expect that he would be jealous sometimes. She was scared at first, but then she couldn't help but laugh. She stood up, put her arms around his arms, and gently touched his tight lips with her lips. I'm kissing you like this. Her movements made Li Yangzi, who was originally uncertain about his eyebrows, quickly calm down, and his slender lips. The anger in her eyes gradually disappeared under his influence. I wonder if it was because of his influence. Lily was fine at first, but as the number of missions increased and her attribute values increased, she rarely laughed like this anymore. Yes, in fact, she looks very good when she smiles. Her eyes seem to be filled with shining stars, and she shows a few teeth. It makes people feel itchy and makes them want to do something. Because it is rare to have such a smile, Leng Hui looked precious when she smiled. In fact, when she smiled, the gloom in Li Yangzi's heart was like the dewdrops in the morning sun, which slowly dissipated with the appearance of the sun, but he remained silent until Lily kissed him gently on the mouth. Her lips were as soft as a butterfly, stopping for a moment, and it easily soothed the pain in his heart. However, Li Yangzi did not say anything at the moment. I touched it lightly and wanted to lie back down. Li Yangzi reached out and pressed on the back of her head, making it impossible for her to escape. Let me go with you on the next mission. Lily just paused, then opened her lips obediently to allow him to attack, and felt the tip of his tongue licking her teeth. It brought about a slight tremor in my body. Li Yangzi had long said that he would go into the mission with her, and she had actually agreed before. Lily knew what it meant after agreeing, but she thought about it. She has truly accepted Li Yangzi. This kind of thing is only a matter of time. The life to survive is too long, and there must always be a companion by her side. Now when it comes to truly pure feelings like Fenning, Lily feels that she has already experienced it. She didn't come out, but Li Yangzi was undoubtedly different in her heart, from beginning to end. People on the mission came and went, but he was always by her side. Now that she knew it was him, it wasn't a bad feeling to have multiple companions accompanying her on the mission. The word good she wanted to say was swallowed up by Li Yangzi before she could say it, and her information was displayed in the starry sky. Gender, female, variable. Name, Lily. Age, 21. Intelligence, 87, out of 100. Appearance, 91, out of 100. Physical strength, 77, 100 full points. Force, 70, out of 100 points. Spirit, 82, out of 100. Reputation, 35, out of 100 points. Skills, 9 Yang Manual, 9 Yin Manual, Heaven and Earth Gate Tao Te Ching, Southern Gu Technique, Star Body Training Technique. Specialties, Advanced Cooking Skills, Advanced Acting Skills, 5 Elements, and Bagua, slightly dabbled in. Charisma, 65, out of 100. Mark, Royal True Dragon Spirit. Because Zobehi is willing to give Lily a blessing. So this time her force value increased by 2 points, but she didn't have the time to look at it at the moment, and the next moment she and Li Yangzi disappeared into the starry sky. Lily, when you grow up, stop being so willful, a woman's earnest voice rang in Lily's ears. There were gongs and drums playing outside, mixed with the sound of firecrackers. Lily's head seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. Was given a headache by this noisy sound. A soft and warm hand grabbed her palm, as if something was put into her wrist. Mom gave you medicine. It's for your own good. Marry and live a good life with Mr. Li, and stop being willful. The woman seemed to be crying, and the next moment she stretched out her hand, and her voice became a little serious. Here comes someone. Help the second young lady onto the sedan chair. 2 hands came forward to hold Lily, one on the left and the other on the right, and lifted her up. She was swaying, unable to touch the ground with the toes of her feet. Now she was a little more awake after entering the task. She bit the tip of her tongue, her mind was a little more awake, her eyes slowly opened, and everything could be seen. A bright red, she shook her head feebly to shake off the thing blocking her sight. The woman who had just spoken in her ear couldn't help but exclaimed. Don't let her take off the hijab, and feed her some more tea. A cup of tea with a strange taste was handed to her lips, and she was forced to swallow it involuntarily, and soon fell asleep and fell into a coma. She felt as if someone had fed her something again. When Lily woke up, her whole body seemed to be on fire. A fire seemed to have ignited from her lower abdomen, making her struggle unbearably. At this moment the red thing covering the top of her head had disappeared. Lily only felt that her body was extremely hot. The feeling of emptiness in her body made her gasp. She kicked her legs twice and turned over shivering. A lot of cold sweat broke out from her body. Just when she was feeling a little uncomfortable, the door was pushed open with a creaking sound, and a girl whispered, "Hurry and help the uncle in." To be continued. P.S. The third update. I have a bad cold. Ugh, ugh. I originally wanted to clamp my nose, but who would have thought that my nose is not the heroine's famous tool? Damn, my nose is falling while I am typing. I can't bear it. How beautiful is that scene? Can you create it? The little freshness is over, and then it starts to torture again. I want my little fans. If you don't give me your fans, I will dump you. No one can stop me, because at this moment, the Earth, can't blocked. Domineering male protagonist, little fan, mine. The domineering male protagonist, readers, mine. Domineering author, if I catch a cold, I want to share it with everyone through a passionate kiss. Canon Fodder strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 729. Someone was pushed next to her, and Lily couldn't help but lean over. At this moment, her eyes were red, and she vaguely understood that she was in trouble. Thinking of the tea that someone had fed her while she was half asleep and half awake, she couldn't help but curse twice in her heart. She knew the person next to her was a man without even looking. She gritted her teeth and tried her best to roll onto the bed. "Get me water, I want to take a bath." The few people who had just sent the man back to his room seemed not to have heard the words and hurriedly retreated. The sound of locks being locked was heard outside, and Lily wanted to scold her now. There was a person lying next to her. She was sweating profusely and her mouth was extremely dry. Lily bit down on the tip of her tongue. There was a wound in her mouth. Now when she bit the wound she had bitten when she entered the mission, it felt like a heartache. Fortunately, she was much more awake now. Her clothes had just been torn open by herself, and now her vision gradually became clearer. Although she was still very hot, Lily still gathered her clothes. Outside the bed, Li Yangzi, who was wearing a red wedding robe, was lying there with his eyes closed. His face was extremely pale. His hands were placed on his chest, as if he was dead. Lily was startled and subconsciously crawled away. She went over and was about to reach out to touch his chest. The person who had his eyes closed suddenly opened them. The hand that was originally resting on his chest accurately grabbed her wrist, and there was a dangerous look in his eyes. The palm holding Lily's wrist was so strong that it seemed to break her palm. "It hurts." Lily couldn't help but snorted, and there was severe pain in her wrist, but after the pain, the wrist that was touched by someone could not help but feel a cool feeling. This was not the first time that she had been given this kind of medicine. Lily naturally knew what was being fed to her while she was dazed. Li Yangzi's originally narrowed eyes gradually faded away from the murderous intent when he heard her speak, and he pulled Lily into his arms. When I opened my eyes again, it was already bright outside. The pair of dragon and phoenix candles in the room have not been extinguished yet, and the smell of sandalwood and candlelight remains in the room. The curtains are swaying gently, and the red tassels hanging on both sides of the bed are also swaying. When he lay on Li Yangzi's chest and opened her eyes, the moment she moved, the arm she held under her neck moved, and a palm gently patted her back. "Lie down for a while." She didn't make a sound, just rubbed her face against his chest. She liked the tranquility of the two leaning against each other very much. She was so lazy that she didn't even want to accept the plot anymore, and she lay there for a long time. The sound of birds chirping outside was accompanied by the sound of someone walking around. Only then did Lily half squint her eyes and begin to absorb the plot. Li Yangzi knew what she was doing and would not let anyone disturb her. He gently rubbed her head with his fingers soothingly, easing her discomfort when receiving the plot. Ming Bei's mother came from a noble family and was known as the most beautiful woman in the martial arts world. At the age of 16, she married Ming's father, who had already become famous in the world at a young age. After the couple got married, the man was outstandingly charming and the woman was extraordinarily beautiful. They became a couple envied by everyone in the world at that time. After marriage, Ming Lily's mother gave birth to a pair of twins. The daughter was named Ming Lily, and the son was named Ming Eujian. Logically speaking, the life of this family of four should be better and better, but the good times did not last long. Ming Lily, when he was 11 years old, Ming's father encountered misfortune because he stood up for someone else. Finally died a violent death. At first, it was clear that Lily's mother was beautiful. But her martial arts skills were not very strong. After her husband died, the trouble did not stop, but instead spread to her and her two children. The trouble that Ming's father couldn't solve even with his own martial arts skills was now dead. How difficult is it for a woman's family to drag a pair of children to escape? At this critical moment, Murong Fan, the famous master of Murong Villa in the world, used the powerful power of the Murong family to protect the mother and son under his wings. Murong Fan was in his prime and had a great reputation in the world. The Murong Villa he founded was one of the major factions in the world. When he was young, he married a wife with the help of his parents, but they only respected each other as guests. Many years ago, he was in when she accidentally met Ming Lily's mother. She fell in love with her at first sight and couldn't help herself from then on. When the beauty in his heart was in trouble, Murong Fan stepped forward. In desperation, Ming Bei's mother had no choice but to commit herself to him. Murong Fan's wife was already in poor health. Before the news came out that Murong Fan was going to marry Ming Lily's mother, she was already seriously ill. She died before Ming Lily's mother came to the house. When the first wife died, the side wife she had originally accepted naturally became the second wife. Murong Fan's first wife left behind a son and a daughter. The son's name was Murong Chui Ching, and the daughter's name was Murong Xiang Er. As soon as her mother died, her father had to marry a wife. Naturally, his children disapproved of it, but Murong Fan had been in love with Ming Bei's mother when he was young. Now that he finally had a chance to get a beautiful woman, the opposition of his two children could not stop him, so Ming Bei's mother still married. After marriage, Murong Fan naturally doted on his new wife and loved her as well as her children. This naturally aroused the resentment of his own children. Murong Chuiqing was 2 years older than Ming Bei, and Ming Bei's brother and sister. The moment he followed his mother into Murong's house, he never stopped humiliating Ming Lily. Sometimes he would scold and humiliate, but the key was that he would sometimes whip him. Murong Chuiqing had practiced martial arts with his father since he was a child, and sometimes he could beat a young child with just one whip. Ming Lily was in pain for several days and nights, but she did not dare to tell others. She still vividly remembered the scene when her mother took her to escape. Now that her life has finally stabilized, Ming's mother often warned her to be patient. She had to treat the two Murong brothers and sisters with respect and courtesy. She did not dare to complain, and was afraid of destroying her mother's hard-won happiness, so she had to endure it by force. Under such circumstances, Ming Lily, who grew up, was naturally afraid of him. The two Murong brothers and sisters gradually grew up, and Murong Fan arranged the marriage for the two of them. Murong Chuiqing married a daughter of a noble family, while Murong Xiang'er was promised to the brother of the lord of Zixiao City, and Li Shi Zhaoyang was married. Wife. The first lord of Zixiao City had outstanding swordsmanship. In the early days of the founding of the dynasty, he used his powerful swordsmanship to overwhelm the martial arts world. He used the power of the Jianghu to help the founding emperor to establish the country. After the founding of the country, the emperor named him a king with a different surname and allowed him to build his own fiefdom. Receiving support from one party for the city tower is equivalent to dividing a territory within the country for the Li family. Many years later, Zixiao City became so powerful that the imperial court was unable to restrain it, and its reputation in the martial arts world was also outstanding. Although Li Zhaoyang is the younger brother of the city lord, he lost his father and mother in his early years, and was raised by his eldest brother Zhao Cheng. Li Zhaocheng only had one son from his wife, and he was weak and sickly since he was a child. At that time, Li Zhaocheng asked a Tianshan warlock to observe his son's fate, saying that he would not live to be 10 years old. 8 Li Zhaocheng only had one son and no other heirs. Therefore, people in the world had rumored that after his son died, Li Zhaocheng would most likely pass the title of city lord to Zhaoyang. How could Murong Xiang'er marry such a young man? A handsome person with unlimited future prospects naturally arouses the envy of thousands of girls, and among these envious people, Ming Lily is also one of them. When the marriage was originally decided, the people from Zixiao City, headed by Li Zhaoyang, had visited Murong's family once. At that time, Ming Lily was whipped by Murong Chuiqing. The whip ripped Ming Lily's clothes to pieces, and the surrounding children. While Siyatu was watching the show with cold eyes, she realized that Bei was getting older and knew what having her clothes torn and exposing her body meant to a girl. However, she was used to being cowardly, but she had no choice but to endure it, not daring to dodge or escape. Just when she was feeling desperate, ashamed, and angry, Li Zhaoyang, who came to Murong family as a guest, lent her a cloak. Although she didn't say a word, the warmth of the borrowed clothes took root in Ming Lily's heart. From then on, she fell madly in love with Li Xiaoyang. When she knew that Li Xiaoyang was going to marry Murong Xiang'er, she felt sad about it. She secretly inquired about Li Xiaoyang and found out that he was a man like Yushulanzi, like a direct immortal in heaven. Although she has the title of the second young lady of the Murong family, Murong Xiang'er has already reached a high level to marry him, not to mention that Ming Beihe is just a dragster brought into the Murong family by Ming's mother. How could Li Xiaoyang like her? It's just that she lost her father when she was young, and her mother lost her mother at the same time when she got married. Ming's mother knew that her marriage to Murong Fan was already a high marriage, and she was afraid that she would not be able to gain a foothold in the Murong family, so she treated Murong Fan's two children far more affectionate than her own children. She didn't know that Ming Beihe had begun to have a crush on Li Xiaoyang. This was only revealed when a servant from the Murong family overheard her calling Mr. Xiaoyang in her sleep. A profligate person dared to think of the fiancé of the eldest daughter of the Murong family, and did not reveal her identity by soaking her urine. Murong Fan therefore warned Ming Lily, and Murong Chuiqing almost beat Ming Lily to death. Her compatriots over the years, his brother had regarded Murong Fan as his biological father and had fallen in love with Murong Xiang'er, but he never dared to confess. After discovering that his sister had strange thoughts about his sweetheart's fiancé, he began to hate Ming Lily. Things got worse and worse. Murong Fan wanted to arrange a marriage for Ming Lily. Originally, he wanted to choose a young and capable husband-in-law for Ming Lily from among the managers of the Murong family. He would make all the decisions about Ming's mother, but the Li family, when I came over there to apply for a job, I somehow heard about this. The only son of Lord Zixiao is now on his deathbed. The Lord is heartbroken and wants to marry his son. Recently, he has been looking for a candidate. The Li family, who came from an ordinary background, looked down upon a good-looking girl. They might not be willing to marry a Tianshan warlock who had declared that he would not survive until the age of 18. Moreover, once her husband died, the city lord might be angry and have his daughter-in-law buried with him. Which girl would marry her knowing she would die? To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 730. Seeing that his son's breathing was getting weaker and weaker day by day, and he was almost expiring. Even with the financial resources and manpower of Zixiao City, Li Xiaocheng was helpless. This time he met Ming Lily. Although his background was not good, his biological father is a well-known young man in the world, and her stepfather Murong Fan has a high status in the world. The key is that she is only 15 years old and has a peerless appearance. She is more than worthy of being the son of the city lord. It's not pleasant to hear Ming Lily's secret love for Li Xiaoyang. Although Murong Fan regards Ming's mother's two children as his own, they are not his biological children after all. Once something happens, he will naturally stand by his biological daughter. Naturally wanted to help cover up the scandal, so he agreed to marry Ming Lily. Although Ming Lily was naturally in unbearable pain, the person she liked became her elder in the future, so you can imagine how she felt. For the first time in her life, she protested, but Ming's mother drugged her and forced her to marry Li Li in Zixiao City. At home, on the night of her wedding, she was given aphrodisiac by someone sent by Ming's mother. Unfortunately, the young master of the Li family could not survive that night. Ming Lily was in pain, panic, and helpless, and accidentally met Li Xiaoyang. Have a relationship. The death of his only son, and the fact that his daughter-in-law had a relationship with his younger brother. The occurrence of such a scandal was nothing short of a shameful thing for the Li family, which has been passed down for hundreds of years. Although Li Xiaocheng saw it as for the sake of his younger brother, he did not kill Ming Beihe, but he allowed her to die with his son in name, and secretly made her change her surname and become Li Ziyang's concubine. She originally thought that she was nameless and could stay by the side of her beloved, but Li Xiaoyang hated her very much. After Murong Xiang'er came in, her life became even more difficult. Her mother did not recognize her as a daughter, the Murong family regarded her as their enemy, and her brother Ming Yejian knew that she had stolen his sweetheart's husband, so he was extremely ashamed of her. Ming Bei betrayed her relatives like everyone else. When Murong Chuiqing came to visit the Li family, he whipped her in public with a long whip until her clothes were in tatters. The handsome young man who used to take a cloak and put it on her like an immortal, just watched with cold eyes as she died under Murong Chuiqing's long whip. It was just a nameless concubine who died. The Murong family would not stand up for her. Apart from her mother shedding 2 tears for her, she had to live her life as she should. Everyone applauded her death. While alive, it was like a stain on Li Xiaoyang, who was as white as spring. That night, she took the aphrodisiac and accidentally had a relationship with Li Xiaoyang, which made Li Xiaoyang humiliated. With Bei's death, Li Xiaoyang's stain was gone. He could live a happy life with Murong Xiang'er. Originally, he didn't like Murong Xiang'er that much. But what happened to Ming Bei made the two couples develop feelings for each other, and they lived a life of love as husband and wife. She understands that Lily is wrong. Her fault is that when she was young and ignorant, she fell in love with the young man who gave her a favor. She knew that she could not reach a higher level, but she overestimated her ability and fell in love with her. Her fault was that she lost her father when she was young and lived with her mother. Her fault was that she lives. The fault lies in her wishful thinking. It casts a stain on that superior person. She hoped that she could start her life over again. She didn't want to be notorious. She didn't want everyone to point at her body and gnash their teeth after death. If she could start over, she would. She also didn't want to have sex with Li Xiaoyang while unconscious after taking aphrodisiac, if she could do it all over again. If she was given a choice in life, she would rather be a widow for Mr. Li and live an ordinary life. This was a woman who was so humble that she didn't even dare to have a wish. Lily sighed, and Li Yangzi reached out and touched her long, smooth hair. In the plot, the original son of the Lord of Xixiao City should have died on the night when Ming Bei married. Thinking of the white face with blue in it last night, if Li Yangzi had not entered the plot, I am afraid that the original Mr. Li would not have died at all. Unable to bear it, Lily's cheeks felt a little feverish as she thought about the wedding night last night. She raised her head and glanced at Li Yangzi. He half closed his eyes to rest, and gently stroked her back with his palms. His face was a little pale, and his lips were so pale that they were almost invisible. The eyelids are so thin that the slender blood vessels underneath can be seen. Being used to Li Yangzi's cold and strong appearance, Leng Huayu saw Li Yangzi's frail appearance again. Lily knew that this was not the real him, but she still couldn't help but reached out and touched his cheek, feeling a little worried. Feel better now? When she entered the mission last night, she was fed aphrodisiac by someone sent by Ming's mother. When she found out that this person was Li Yangzi, she naturally pounced on him and ate him without hesitation. She was unconscious at that time, but she vaguely remembered Li Yangzi. He coughed a few times, and she took the initiative most of the time. This was not like his character. At this moment, Lily tried not to think about the scene last night. His cheeks were a little cold, and he became thinner and sharper, just between his brows. The coldness was especially present, and the naked chest was like white jade. Paired with the festive red satin, her face became even more ugly. Li Yangzi didn't open his eyes. He just stretched out his hand to hold Lily's palm and touched it to his lips. Don't worry, this body was originally that of a dying person. He was equivalent to receiving the body of a dead person. It was very oppressive for him. Entering the world he created, Li Yangzi's strength will be suppressed to a certain extent, and the body he receives is a dead person. Even if he wants to repair it, it cannot be completed in a day or two. He has been nursing this body since Lily fell asleep last night. It's just that the original plot set that the original owner would die in the 18th catastrophe. The destiny brought by innateness was not easy to change. Even if the world was created by Li Yangzi, once the rules were set, he wanted to change them. After entering the mission, even if one's strength is suppressed, it cannot be accomplished overnight. Although he said he wasn't worried, his voice was gentle when he spoke. Different from his usual cold demeanor, Lily was actually a little worried, but for a moment she didn't know how to help Li Yangzi. He was so cold that he hugged him tightly and used his own body temperature to warm him. I wonder if what the two of them just said was heard by the girl on duty outside. He only heard the sound of the door opening and the sound of a few light footsteps outside. He got up, but stopped at the door of the arched outer room, and asked in a low voice, "Young lady, are you awake?" Seeing Li Yangzi closing his eyes to rest, Lily responded softly, kissed him on the cheek, straightened his hair scattered beside the bed, and whispered, "You sleep for a while, I'll go and ask, is there any way?" The lord of Zixiao City, Li Zhaochang, only has Li Yangzi as a son in name only. If she knew that her son had not died last night, she would definitely find a way to recuperate his body. She knew Li Yangzi's ability. Although it would be a matter of time before he could recuperate his body, looking at him although he looked weak for a while, Lily felt a little worried. If he could regulate his body with medicine, he would definitely get better faster. Li Yangzi was really weak at this time. He nodded slightly when he heard this. Although he didn't want to let go of Lily's hand at this moment, they were both on task. The future was long and he didn't have to rush. Li Yangzi was not used to this feeling of being weak. It would be good for both of them to recover as soon as possible. His hand that was originally around Lily's waist dropped weakly, and he coughed twice. Lily stroked his chest for him, and saw that he tilted his head and fell asleep, revealing half of her delicate side face. Her slender eyelashes are like butterflies, and her face is as handsome as a painting. Li Yangzi used to be handsome and cold, but now she didn't expect that she would be so coquettish once she was weak. She couldn't help lowering her head and brushing her long hair, and touched her lips to the corner of his lips, feeling that he wanted to open his eyes. Before he could reach out to hug her, she quickly and carefully crawled over him. She was drugged last night and was anxious. She didn't remember much of what she did. Her wedding robe was torn all over the floor. She reluctantly picked up one piece and wrapped it around her body. Then she called the maid outside to come in. People outside had already heard the commotion in the house, and a stranger came in and asked, "Young madam, young city lord. My husband is feeling a little unwell, and he hasn't woken up yet." The woman had a look of hope on her face. When she heard Lily say that Li Yangzi was still alive, her eyes suddenly lit up. She was so excited that she didn't know what to say. "What's good?" My lips were trembling for a long time. "The young madam will be the great benefactor of Zixiao City from now on. The old lady is waiting to return to the city lord and the madam to reply. The servants will wait for the young madam to wash up, and then please go to Zixiao Palace. Madam has something to say to you." Zi lowered her head and bowed down. Her attitude towards Lily changed from indifference at first to gratitude later. After saying this, she quickly retreated outside in a panic. The pace was so fast that Lily felt her clothes float up. After a while, the woman disappeared. The hot water had been prepared a long time ago. She was sweating all over last night and something like that happened again. Her body was sticky and uncomfortable. When she was helped into the bathtub in the room, she could not help but see those things on her body. Marks, these were left by Murong Chuiqing when he was young. Some of the scars were so long ago that only a shallow trace remained. Some of the scars were beaten shortly before getting married. The scars have fallen away, but the new tender skin has grown. It was still very thin and looked crisscrossed, very scary. Just looking at these scars, you can tell what kind of life Ming Lily lived when she was young. These scars hurt just by looking at them, and I don't know how Ming Lily survived as a child. When she went out after taking a bath, the servant took a handkerchief and wringed her hair for her. Li Zhaocheng and his wife were still waiting to see her. The room was now being tidied up again. Li Yangzi had obviously been washed by someone, and the bed sheets it had been changed, and the curtains were raised. He turned his face toward the inside of the bed and did not move. A few strands of his long black hair slid down the side of the pillow. The girls around him did not dare to come forward and touch him, for fear that they would something bad happen to this delicate and sick young man. To be continued. P.S. Second update: the chapter name has been changed, but the content has not changed. It was just a temporary plot, and I didn't want to write it like that. The author's heart was like the sky in June, and suddenly I thought it changes as it changes. I also want to control myself, but Emma can't stop chewing Suanmei. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 731. Lily stepped forward to lift up Li Yangzi's hanging hair, and found that his pale face had turned a little crimson at this moment, and fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. His pale pink lips were becoming more and more bloodless. Lily leaned over at that moment, his body tensed up because someone was approaching, but after discovering who the person was, he quickly relaxed. He opened his eyes with some difficulty. His slender eyes were now less slender than before. It was deserted and deep, but seemed to be covered with a layer of smoke due to illness, which made people feel a little fond of it. Bear it for 2 days. Lily wiped the sweat off her head for him. She had just taken a shower, and her palms were still moist. The girl's soft palms were cold, and covering her head obviously made Li Yangzi feel a little comfortable. His slightly frowned brows relaxed, and he raised his hand to cover her palm with difficulty. His palm was surprisingly hot, but the back of his hand had no warmth at all. After a while, Kung Fu Lily's hand was a little warm. She planned to stay idle during this period, and practice martial arts when she came back. She should be able to help Li Yangzi to a certain extent, which was much better than just watching on her own. The girls did not dare to touch Li Yangzi, the treasure in the eyes of the city lord. They were afraid that if something happened, their lives would be taken. In Li Yangzi's current situation, Lily did not dare to let them do anything. She had to have someone comb it for her hair, prepare to rush to the palace of the Lord of Xixiao City first to see what Li Zhaocheng and his wife say. The courtyard where their new house is located is separated from the main city. In the past, Li Yangzi needed to rest after being seriously ill. His luck was weak, and when the city lord's mansion was first established, it was under the guidance of an expert. With great luck, the two collided. Li Yangzi's fate was determined and his horoscopes were approved by the Tianshan warlock. When his momentum was low, it was not suitable to live in a place like the city lord's mansion, so Li Zhaocheng chose another place to build a mansion for his son outside the city lord's mansion. To enter the city lord's palace now, Lily had to go on a chariot. This mansion did not have any red decorations. It is estimated that the condition of Li Yangzi was too bad when he was sent back to his room last night. Li Zhaocheng did not expect his son to survive. The surroundings were deserted, but birds were chirping on the branches in the morning. Ming Beihe in the plot is naturally not qualified to sit on the chariot. At that time, Li Zhaocheng's only son died soon after he was brought into the wedding room. Coupled with the inexplicable scandal that happened between her and Li Zhaoyang, Li Zhaocheng wished that he could cut Ming Beihe, his nominal daughter-in-law, into pieces, and how could he have someone prepare a chariot for her without even seeing her? But this time the situation was different. This time, because of Li Yangzi's intervention, the young city lord who was supposed to survive the 18th fate survived again. Naturally, Lily, the flushed bride, had an extraordinary status. The chariot had been prepared a long time ago. The weather was very cool in the morning in June. The gauze curtains hanging on both sides of the chariot were rolled up. I didn't sleep for long last night. It was time for the chariot to enter the city now. She had some time on her hands, but it would take at least a quarter of an hour. Lily was going to take advantage of this time to close her eyes and rest her mind, put her head on her hands, and fell asleep without realizing it. It felt like I had just fallen asleep, but the carriage stopped all of a sudden. Her figure swayed. The hand holding the head shook, and the person suddenly woke up. One was wearing a white robe with wide sleeves and a purple hem at the hem. A tall and thin young man stopped in front of the chariot. His face was gloomy. Half of her long hair is tied up high with a purple gold and jade crown, with a huge purple pearl in the crown. Her face is handsome and feminine, with a stern look on her eyebrows. She holds a red whip in her hand and wears moire boots embroidered with white gold thread. After a while, his legs were slightly apart, his eyes were like a falcon, he looked at Lily on the chariot and sneered. "My good sister, I've been waiting for you for a long time." He had a beautiful face and a slightly pointed chin. When he spoke, Lily felt her body begin to tremble involuntarily. Murong Chuking left a deep shadow on Ming Lily. So deep that it even affected her a little now. When the people carrying the carriage saw that it was Murong Chuiching who was blocking the way, they all stopped. The lips of the leading maid and the person carrying the carriage moved. As if a few words were heard, these people actually put down the chariot and quickly walked out. After a while, Kung Fu disappeared. At this moment, we have not yet entered the palace of the city lord. Apart from Murong Chuking, who was blocking the way in front of the chariot, there is no one on the winding and clean road. The maid who just led the way is a girl who came from the Murong family as a dowry. It should be clear. She knew Lily's status in the Murong family, so when she saw Murong Chuiching appearing, she quickly led the people to hide. Lily took a deep breath and held her hands tightly on the side of the chariot. Her heart was beating fast, and the things on her body where the scar that had healed long ago started to hurt again when he saw the whip in Murong Chuiking's hand. "You bitch, get off here," Murong Chuiching narrowed his eyes. As soon as these people left, the sinister aura in his eyes could no longer be concealed, and he looked at Lily's sinister smile. In order to celebrate Li Yangzi's wedding, the Murong family members hurriedly married Ming Lily. At this critical moment of his son's life and death, Li Zhaochen naturally did not care about any further procedures for his son's wedding, so everything in the wedding was kept simple and Ming Lily's marriage was kept simple. She got married later than Murong Xiang but she got married earlier than Murong Xiang The Murong family members who came to see her off this time were not her eldest brother who was no longer close to her since her father remarried, but Murong Chuking, the bright man. The devil in Lily. As Li Ziyang's future brother-in-law, as the future successor of the Murong family, Murong Chuiching lived in the Zixiao city palace. The scene of him blocking the way was not shown in the plot, but when he learned that Ming Lily and Li Zhaoyang had a relationship, his expression at that moment was as if he wanted to swallow her alive, which was completely consistent with the eerie and terrifying appearance at this time. "Get off here," after Murong Chuking yelled, Lily didn't move. She was thinking of countermeasures in her mind, but Murong Chuking laughed ferociously, and with a body like electricity, he stepped forward and grabbed Lily's wrist. The child dragged her down. His palm seemed to be like steel. When he was trapped, Lily felt as if her wrist was about to break. The bones rattled. Her face was pale and she did not dare to struggle. Murong Chuiching pressed her hard with a flick of his hand. On the white jade city wall beside her, a palm struck her cheek, and the wind of the palm lifted up a few strands of hair in front of her forehead and flew up. Lily tensed her body at this moment. Murong Chuiching seemed to be an angry wolf, gnashing his teeth. His feminine and handsome face looked very scary. The long whip he held in his right hand was now pressed against Lily. He raised his chin, forcing her to raise her head. "You little bitch, don't you dare to look at me anymore." His tone was full of murderous intent, his eyes were a little red, his expression was a bit violent, and his rapid breathing blew on her. Lily's cheek felt as if being stared at by a poisonous snake, and the weather in June made people shiver. You little bitch, you are just like your mother, a shameless thing. Your mother seduced my father. You, a bitch, seduced my future brother-in-law. The more he spoke, the more violent he became. Lily raised her chin and the long whip slashed under her collar. The clothes were parted, revealing a section of snow-white skin underneath, with a few bruises on it. Murong Chuiching was stunned for a long time, and suddenly he went crazy, and the long whip that was rolled into a ball in his hand was suddenly thrown in the air, and it was about to be thrown at Lily the next moment. She instinctively tensed up her body. At this moment, the fear in her body wanted to hide, but Lily gritted her teeth and held back. She did not hide away. Instead, when the long whip was swung at her, she looked at Murong Chuiching and sneered. Get up. Now that I have married into Xixiao City, I am the woman of the young city lord of Xixiao City. Murong favors me. Do you dare to hit me again? When the long whip was about to reach her chest, Murong Chuiching heard this and turned his hand abruptly, causing the whip to make a sharp sound in the air. The next moment, he quickly took the long whip back and looked at Lily. I couldn't help but laugh sinisterly. Okay, we've only been married for a day, and you already dare to threaten me with Xixiao City, you bitch. His expression was mixed with gloom and light. After a while, he suddenly threw the long whip in his hand to the ground, reaching out as fast as lightning. He immediately grabbed Lily's neck and lifted her up. This madman! Lily felt that her breathing was being choked, and her face turned red from the suffocation, but she refused to compromise and beg for mercy. Murong Chuiching pulled her clothes apart, and then Lily couldn't help but started to struggle. Bitch, bitch. As despicable as your mother. Where did that man touch you? Did he see those ugly marks on your body? Did he see these ugly scars on your body? Murong Chuiching's hands were groping around Lily's waist, and seeing her struggling like a kitten in his palm, his eyes flashed, and he put her down, then turned her around lightly and pressed her down. When he reached the wall, he easily pulled off her clothes. The girl had a slim figure, but where the red belly band rope was tied, her skin was covered with scars. He reached out and touched it, and laughed like a lunatic. He stood up and said, Has he seen the injuries on your body? Are you so ugly? Just like you have an ugly body and a despicable soul underneath the beautiful skin. What does it have to do with you? Lily's eyes narrowed. It felt really bad to let the mermaid be fleshed out at this moment. She was so angry that her face was pressed against the jade wall, and it hurt from being rubbed. She felt that Murong favored her. The hands that were rough and calloused in the cold caressed his back, as if he was entangled by a poisonous snake. He felt sick and dangerous in his heart. Murong Chuiching, you have the ability to kill your father, but he is shameless. It's because he is lustful and shameless. If she had a choice, the original owner also hoped to die together with her father, without needing the protection of the Murong family. Compared with the long-term torture and the current happiness, Ming Lily didn't care about that little bit of safety at all. If it weren't for her mother, she wouldn't have endured it. Not coming down. To be continued.